Well, good morning, everybody. I think folks are still trickling in. And we had 153 folks register. So we are almost halfway there. Anyway, as Leslie said, I'm Martin Richards. I am Executive Director of Community Farm Alliance. First thing I want to say is that we have a lot of friends and neighbors right now in the region who are experiencing tremendous amounts of rain. I know especially here in Kentucky and Eastern Kentucky, some communities have had upwards of 8 inches since like Monday. So let's all please keep them in our thoughts and prayers for this. This is, I think, a really exciting time to be doing this work. We have, CFA did a scan several years ago of just the programs and projects of healthy food access, and it was amazing how many projects, how much work is going on in the region. And then when you expand that to even more within the food system, it is a great time. Not only that, we are in the process, this nation is in the process of creating the next farm bill. And then there's this White House conference on hunger, food, and hunger, nutrition, and health that is going to be convening in September, and over the course of the summer have been soliciting input for that. That we will be submitting some of the outcomes from today to that effort. But you also are in a position to submit comments directly yourself. And I put that link into the chat. And Leslie is going to go over more about today and the rest of the 6 convenings that we have over the next few months. So again, welcome very much. It's exciting. And this is, please interact. This is an opportunity to interact, and that is the most valuable part of the Central Appalachian Network. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. So you'll probably have noticed that I've already brought up the Central Appalachian Network's website. Like I'm sure everyone's website, always a work in progress. But we are so delighted to partner with USDA on these 6 summits over the next 6 months. So July is the kickoff. Thank you for registering. We know many people have registered again for upcoming summits as well. But I just want to talk a little bit about the logistics of today, review the agenda. I think of note, what's really critical is your participation. And I think we recognize after 2.5 years, the challenges we all have probably spending our lives on Zoom. So we get it. We know that you'll probably be doing a little multitasking perhaps, but we've tried to put together an agenda that's really going to lift the stories, give power to the voices of folks across the region who are doing this work. So a fair food system, I think, is the North Star for most of us on this call, all of us on this call. So we're trying to create these summits to really demonstrate how scalable solutions can create better community food systems. So please pass the word on. There's probably other folks that you work with, other colleagues, other stakeholders in your subregion. We really want to get more folks to participate. So the agenda is really conceived in such a way that we're showcasing some of the various models throughout Central Appalachia. You're going to hear a lot of different presenters and panelists. We will hear from Deputy Undersecretary at USDA for Marketing and Regulatory Programs, Deputy Undersecretary May Wu. We are delighted to have her with us today. And then we're also going to have some opportunities for you to take a break and for us to be able to hopefully increase that sort of, I would say, feedback link throughout these summits. And then at 11:30, Martin will come back, probably with Jennifer from his team at CFA as well. And you'll hear from, some of the folks who really animate these local food value chains that are creating much deeper access for local and regional food within Central Appalachia. And at the very end, we'll do a deeper dive. We really want to have a call to action. So we'll have some breakout sessions that you'll be able to participate in, and we'll do some wrap up and highlights. So you're going to hear from a lot of different folks today. We'll be announcing more of the agendas here soon. The next summit will be in August. There's a lot of opportunity for folks to participate at all levels. If you have, I really see this group as assembling the hive mind of fair food systems. So we thank all our investors. These summits are led primarily by the Central Appalachian Network and the USDA, but we really need to acknowledge some of the other partners, the Educational Foundation of America, Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky, and the Sugar Bush Valley Impact Investments. And we know there's scads of other stakeholders at all levels investing in this work. I also want to again remind you that you can always visit the Central Appalachian Network website. This is an easy way to register for the next sessions. If you follow, I would say, any of us on social media, you've probably seen a lot of reminders. So the next summit will be coming up on the fourth Thursday of August. When we originally conceived our schedule, we sort of forgot that, oh yeah, November and December, that's usually when Thanksgiving and Christmas fall. So we'll have some different dates announced at the end of the year for November and December. So please stay tuned, and please continue to connect with us. So what are our goals? Well, I really want to underscore, I think, what the Central Appalachian Network hopes to accomplish with these summits. We really have always at CAN been very committed to peer learning. So the goal here is to really create a learning environment, addressing many of the problems related to nutrition security. Many of us, I think, across the region have a lot of expertise and knowledge increasing food security, healthy food access, and making sure particularly that local food is affordable for everyone in our communities. We also want to engage a coalition of organizations who are working to build and support more resilient and accessible community food systems. So many of you represent that work, and we, again, want to make sure that if you have things to share, that we include you in future agendas. And then we're going to do targeted technical assistance. There are a lot of opportunities now with USDA and other qualified providers. We want to make sure that folks stay connected to those resources. So it's important in Central Appalachia that we attract federal, public, and private funding if we're going to go to scale and really address the food insecurity that is unfortunately very entrenched in our region. And then we want to invite other nonprofit partners. CAN operates a number of different working groups. CAN's work is always about galvanizing the grassroots. So we want to find out who else is doing this work that maybe many of us are not aware of. So this is another platform through these summits to really get to know who else is working on related projects and how to engage them in a lot of the network activities that are embedded in not just CAN, but in many of the partnerships throughout the region. So those are our goals for these summits. Again, food system hive mind, please join in. Feel free to contact any one of us, provide feedback on any of the social media platforms. We really want to create a space where inclusion, diversity, and equity is always transparent here in this work. So I'm going to pass the baton now for our next session here with Kathleen Terry Baker. She and Atlas from Rural Support Partners are going to highlight some of the food and ag system working groups that CAN leads throughout the region. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you guys can. So again, welcome. And
thank you, Leslie.
excellent.
Atlas, I believe, is having some technical difficulties, so I will pull up our all right. Hopefully y'all are seeing my screen. So what I am tasked with doing, what Atlas, and hopefully Atlas will be able to join us soon, is to just do a little bit of an overview of the Central Appalachian Network, and most importantly, the different working groups that enable a whole host of people to be able to, as Leslie said, be a hive mind, offer your voice, weigh in on issues of importance to the work that you're doing. One just quick overview of our footprint. It's Central Appalachia, which includes the states of Kentucky, or Eastern Kentucky, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. And we consider that is over 170 counties, 39% of which are designated by the Appalachian Regional Commission as distressed, and 28% at risk. Those are substantial statistics. Those are from a 2015 to 2019 data source. But the point is that it is an area in need of our attention. So our mission at CAN is to advance the equitable, just, and sustainable economic transition of Central Appalachia. And we view that economic transition as being very comprehensive. It includes food access, and access to healthy food supports an economic transition. We have multiple strategies that we use. The first that we're listing here is that we connect regional organizations and community-based practitioners. And this summit is an excellent example of what that looks like. We also synergize local efforts to develop and grow economic sectors. And I'll touch on in a little bit what that looks like in terms of the working groups and how those are connected. We maximize the impact of collective work to create resilient, diverse, and inclusive communities throughout our region. We really are leaning into the whole diversity, equity, and inclusion realm. Hopefully you'll feel and see that throughout our conversations today. But the core of what we do is our working groups. It's in the working groups where the rubber really meets the road. We have, at this point, 4 working groups, and you'll see them here. The Clean Energy Working Group has 3 different areas that they've broken into. So as these working groups evolve, sometimes they get big enough and the work gets large enough that they need to divide in order to be able to accomplish the work that the group is trying to accomplish. So when you think about a working group, it is members of the practitioner community, so nonprofits or those maybe doing the on-the-ground work, but it's also members of a funding community and members of, private industry. It really depends on whether folks are interested in joining and showing up and doing this work. Working groups are very open. We encourage people from all areas to join and to lend their voice to what we are trying to do to move this economic transition in Appalachia. So clean energy has three different subgroups: investments, meaning investments in clean energy, the workforce that can be built and supported using that sector, and then policy, because policy is obviously a very critical piece of a clean energy economy. The second one we have listed here is downtown redevelopment, which is probably one of our newer and growing working groups. Food and ag systems, which is the third one. That's actually our oldest working group that we've had at CAN. And it's always been something that the organization I work with, which is Appalachian Sustainable Development, we've always been participants in that and have found great value in it. I guess a couple of years ago, we decided it was getting too large and unwieldy. And so that was when we broke that into three different subgroups: PAD, which stands for processing, aggregation, and distribution; healthy food access, which is the subgroup that's really bringing this summit to you today; and then beginning farmer support and entrepreneur support as it pertains to the food and ag system. And then the final working group is reuse, which is built upon the reuse corridor that Coalfield Development and Rural Action have been starting to identify ways to utilize our waste products in ways that build economies in Central Appalachia. So the core work of the working groups can be, just to try and explain how they function, into four general buckets: think tanks, which would be understanding and analyzing like the different local and regional trends, sharing knowledge so that we're leveraging the different resources that we all can bring to the table. The second would be peer learning spaces. So it gives us an opportunity, much like today, to be able to share our knowledge across Central Appalachia, because we know that there's no one organization that has the ownership of all knowledge. Strategy hubs. So we're trying to think collectively in a very strategic way across multiple states. And then finally, clearinghouses. Leslie brought up the Central Appalachian Network website, and that is going to be, it's still in development, and we're hoping that it'll be even in a better resource for people to access. It's already got some great resources on it, and the enhancing it as a clearinghouse is our immediate goal. This next slide is a little bit busy, but that's because it is. We do a lot of work in CAN, and what we try to do is represent here how it's structured. So at the core, you'll see a steering committee, and the steering committee is kind of historically been what people had thought of as the core of CAN. And over the last few years, we've recognized and acknowledged that it can't be just that. It needs to be really centered more in the working groups. And so over the last probably 18 to 24 months, we've done a lot more work to transition and build up the facilitation of these different working groups. You'll see also these little people in between the steering committee and the different working groups. Those are the co-chairs of those working groups, which actually work with a steering committee to help provide some guidance for what do we need to do next. You'll also see you'll see that we have equity is not a working group. Equity is supposed to be a part of how we function, but we also know that we have a lot of work to do in the equity arena to make sure that we are well informed, educating ourselves, and evolving. We have workforce development and outdoor recreation and tourism as additional they're not working groups yet, but they're budding, and we anticipate they might become working groups in the future. Oops, sorry about that. So because this is a food and ag system summit, what we thought we'd do is just give you an example from the food and ag systems working group And because I'm the co-chair of the processing, aggregation, and distribution subgroup, what I thought I'd do is just use a couple of examples for how these working groups actually function. So ASD and some of our partners like AceNet and Community Farm Alliance have been working for the last several years on something we call the Central Appalachian Food Corridor. And the whole concept of this corridor is that we need to work together to make sure that we are enabling producers from across Central Appalachia to have markets. We're also getting food to where it needs to be, both from an economic standpoint to buyers and customers, and also to those who need it in hard to serve and underserved communities. So our food access, healthy food access work. So just using that project as kind of an example, these 6 things that I have up on the screen here are generally how that corridor project is working. So strategy is one of the areas that early on we realized we needed to focus on. And the beauty of CAN, from my perspective, with ASD having been the lead on that corridor project, is that there's all of these people and these network of networks, as Leslie likes to say, that can bring their expertise to the table, bring their resources, bring infrastructure to the table. But one of the things that prompted the development of that corridor project is that we were painfully aware of the fact that there really isn't anyone tasked with strategic implementation, strategic planning and implementation, I should say, of infrastructure for processing, aggregation, and distribution across a multi-state area. And so that is something that this corridor project is seeking to do, is to be kind of a proving ground for the PAD subgroup, so that we can identify the best ways to provide guidance to those who are seeking to help expand the food system. Creative use and multi-use facilities is an example of a strategic deployment of infrastructure. So for example, 2 or 3 years ago, we began working with some farmers in Kentucky who wanted to access markets that ASD was serving, and ASD is based in Southwest Virginia. So they had no way of getting product to us. So what we didn't want to do is establish some food hub that we had to then care and feed for like years, because it wouldn't be cost effective. Instead, what we managed to do is work with these farmers and a local food bank that serves as an aggregation site from which ASD can retrieve product. And it's been super cost effective, and it's worked great. And we've had a substantial expansion of farmers utilizing that, and to the point where we might grow where we do need a facility, but it won't be, a generic facility will do what is needed for a particular opportunity. We also are building a pipeline of leaders, building a pipeline of organizations. We recognize Leslie has a tendency to call ASD the grandmother of food hubs, because we've had our food hub since 2000. Well, it's incumbent upon us as a part of CAN to help those who are just getting started fit into the ecosystem in ways that are healthy and serve their needs for their communities. And that's conversations that we have all the time within this working group. Peer learning is critical. We like to say that CAN is something of, it began something as a support group for people doing economic transition work in Appalachia. It's the same with food and ag systems. It's hard work, and we need people to help bounce ideas off of for how we're going to solve really difficult problems. Relationships are key. Relationships are the foundation of CAN and the working groups, and they are how we build trust, and how we have built trust for almost 30 years. And then finally, transparency, which is near and dear to my heart. ASD, as I said, we've had this food hub for 20 years, and that doesn't mean it has gone without a single glitch. What I believe that the working groups and CAN exist to do is to be transparent and to share both the lessons learned and the successes, and make it so that everyone feels comfortable in learning together, so that we can become a it's like an incredibly healthy example of a rural food system. What I would also like to do is welcome anyone to join the Food and Ag Systems Working Group or any of the other working groups. We'd love for you to be engaged in whatever way is appropriate for you. One of the main things that we do when it's not the pandemic is we'll have opportunities for what we call can tanks, which are learning opportunities. We'll have convenings. There's just a lot of opportunities for us to, as a region, come together to learn. And so we welcome you to sign up for our newsletter and our on the CAN website. We also do create a lot of different research and reports that can be found on the CAN website. We welcome your feedback on how you'd like to work with us. And then finally, CAN does, as we have funding, offer mini grants. So we will publish those and widely and share that as appropriate. So I'm sorry, I don't know whether Atlas was ever able to join. But if not, any questions on CAN or the working groups?
Hey, Kathleen, I don't think Atlas, I don't think they have been able to join us. I do want to just give a call out to everyone. Thank you for putting introductions into the chat. And it was probably an oversight on my part too. If you have questions at any point throughout the summit or feedback that we need to know, please use the chat because that will be available to us after each summit if we've missed it live. So how about questions for those of us affiliated as anchor organizations within the Central Appalachian Network? I recognize that there's loads of people on Zoom this morning who are actually active in many of the working groups. I wonder if anybody else would like to unmute and maybe ask a question or share their experience being a participant in one of the food and ag working groups.
And I realized that I didn't name the steering committee organizations, and partly that's because we're kind of moving away from that. But if you have been engaged in CAN for a while, it would be great for you to introduce yourself. I know we have a couple of minutes before the next section, I should say.
Speak up, don't make me call on you.
Hey everyone, I'm Tom Redfern from Rural Action. We're longtime members of the Central Appalachian Network Steering Committee, and proud to be so. And you'll be hearing more about our work later on this morning.
Hi, I'm Marissa Christie with KCARD, the Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development. I'm not camera ready this morning, still in a t-shirt. So, but we've been associated with CAN for, I don't know, 6-7 years now, and have been on the steering committee a little over a year. So really enjoy the work and seeing this work get done and portrayed, because you all do a really great job with it.
Hey folks, I did make it this morning. I didn't know quite how to jump in with you, Kathleen, and message some folks, but I think it got lost in the chat. So just wanted to say thanks for everybody being here, and been with CAN for about a year as the network manager. So thanks, Kathleen, for holding that presentation down this morning. I apologize that I've had tech issues, but good to see everybody.
Well, Atlas, please feel free to weigh in with whatever beautiful things you were going to say that I did not.
No, I think you did really well. I think you got most of it.
So Atlas is a remarkable graphic designer as well. So that beautiful slideshow, or many of the slideshows that they create for CAN, really benefits from Atlas's ability to capture oftentimes pretty complicated ideas into simple graphics that we do our best explaining. How about some newer members of the working groups? Anything you'd like to share?
I'll jump in. My name's Kayla. I'm with the Appalachian RC&D Council in Northeast Tennessee, and I just started participating with the working groups a couple of months ago. And so far, I've really enjoyed just getting to talk to everyone at CAN and getting involved in this work. I think it's amazing that we have this resource in Central Appalachia, and I hope to see more and more people from Northeast Tennessee get involved with CAN.
So Kathleen and Atlas, if folks want to join maybe one of the food and ag working groups, what would be the important next step for them to take?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I was chatting, but so you can do a few things. You could email me at atlasforruralsupportpartners.com, and I can get you on that invite. You could also email someone in the CAN working group to talk to if you have any questions about the group first. The folks that already participate would have a different view than I do as more of a facilitator in those spaces. So you could email them, and or you could also email Fairly. So Fairly is at Rural Support Partners, the same as my email, and we could get you on that contact list. But I would really encourage you to reach out to folks that participate in the working groups too, to chat with them about their experience and what they get out of those working groups.
Anyone else have anything to share? I know we have some of our partners at the Appalachian Funders Network as well, so we appreciate their attendance. They're often in partnership with a lot of the food and ag working groups within the Central Appalachian Network as well. I wonder if anybody from AFN might want to say a few words.
This is Amalia Mendoza from the Foundation for Healthy Kentucky, and I am co-chair of the Appalachian Funders Network Food and Ag work group. I bring kind of the health perspective, not so much the ag perspective, and we are very happy to be supporting CAN, and we've really learned so much from working with you. I'm happy to be here.
This is Erin Prescott and Cheryl Graffanino from the Osteopathic Heritage Foundations. We're in Central Ohio, but we also support Southeastern Ohio and longtime supporters of the Appalachia Accessible Food Network. And so glad to be included in this event. So thank you for opening it up to folks beyond CAN members. We learned so much, so appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thanks so much, Erin and Amalia. Well, remarkably, we stayed totally on time on this agenda. So I'm ready, Alex, to pass the baton, I think, for facilitation to you. Alex has been our extremely committed and helpful USDA partner. He's made everything work. We're all on Zoom together because Alex has been able to help us with the agenda and all the technology. So thank you, Alex.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And thanks everyone for taking the time to join the call today, to CAN, to the organizing partners, and everyone for just taking the time. I know it's busy, the busy context, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So I really just wanted to express my many thanks to all the USDA folks on the call too, for taking the time to join us and provide just a quick couple of comments about the series. We've been working with CAN over the past several months to kind of think through what some type of offering here might look like, really focused on capacity and how we might work with local partners to really address challenges and needs on the ground. I think right now more than ever, local solutions are critical to ensuring we can achieve our goals and objectives and break down those challenges. And USDA is here to assist you all and everyone through that process as they seek federal funding or other private funding. So I'm really excited to be here and be a part of it. We'll be here throughout the series, right? Trying to match relevant and practical technical assistance opportunities and answer any questions that folks have on the calls. And really just excited too about this unique public-private partnership we have on the call here today. And I think that this really could lay the groundwork for a very unique kind of roadmap for accomplishing this local and regional food systems work. So without further ado, I would like to introduce May Wu, the Deputy Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Thank you for your leadership and for joining us today.
Thanks, Alex. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today and hosting this really important summit. And really thanks to all of y'all who are working every day to improve the food system in your local communities. It's such important work. And I'm glad to be here virtually with you, but hopefully there'll come a time when we can actually meet in person and enjoy this time of year, or maybe even when the fall colors are at their peak. I'm from North Carolina, so definitely appreciate the Appalachians myself. So, to talk about like some of the work that we're doing here at USDA, we're really aware and know that families are having a tough time right now making ends meet, that food banks are working day and night to try to do their best to feed families with the same resources that they've always had. And so that's why President Biden's top economic priority is really addressing inflation and helping to reduce costs and make things easier for families in Central Appalachia and all over the country. And during the pandemic, we saw how hard people were working every day to put, throughout the food supply chain to feed Americans and to deal with all the challenges that they were facing. And I think these last few years of the pandemic have really put a spotlight on a lot of long-term issues that maybe y'all already knew were there, but I think a lot more people are now more aware of in our food system. But we also saw really how truly adaptable and innovative that people who are working in our food system can be. And so we've got this great opportunity now, this unique chance to learn from the last few years and to rebuild on that innovation and support a new food system, one that is stronger, that's more resilient, and that really works for everyone and not just a few. Feeding ourselves is a matter of security. It's, for our nation, for our food system, for our economy. And like the president has said, we're going to rebuild our economy, not from the top down, but from the bottom up and from the middle out. And now is really the time for us to invest in our communities and to make it strong and stronger for the generations that come. And so we're at USDA committed to strengthening the proven tools that we have, like the Emergency Food Assistance Program, like Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, like the Women, Infants, and Children Program and other child nutrition programs to help get food to those in need, but also to use new solutions and tools to kind of combat some of those evolving challenges that we're facing. And I think that the topics that y'all are going to be discussing at the summit really align with our secretary's vision for transforming our nation's food system and really creating this food system of the future. And this is really one where that is going to be more distributed. It's going to be more focused on local. It's going to be more fair. And so some of the things that we're thinking about what we need to do and what we need this new food system to do is to really deliver a better deal for farmers, for ranchers, for growers, for consumers through more new and better markets. We need to make it easier to adapt to and mitigate the effects of our changing climate and reduce the carbon footprint of food production. We need to improve the health of our communities by increasing access to healthy, local grown foods. And then we need to sustainably produce more food. And a central part of that vision is what y'all are focusing on here, how we can really strengthen the community systems and make our food system more resilient and more sustainable, and help communities where food is not secure and support the growers in areas across Central Appalachia. And we've also recognized that for far too long, rural communities, underserved communities, communities that experience persistent poverty and those who live there have been left behind. And so we have seen through this pandemic the importance of increasing opportunities for local and regional producers. And we think that the work that we're doing will help create more economic opportunities for these communities and for local producers. So what is this big plan that we're doing? So Secretary Vilsack has a vision and a plan around food systems transformation. And we really are taking a systems approach to all of this. And we're focusing on key areas throughout the food supply chain. So production, processing, aggregation, distribution, and also looking at consumers and markets. And I think that this is probably a lot of the same areas that your network has been looking at and for investment too. So what we did here at USDA was we took a really long, hard and careful look at the existing programs that we already have, and then tried to see if there are gaps in what we're doing. And so using the funding that we received through the American Rescue Plan, we identified those really successful programs that could use more funding and increase funding to them where it matters most, but then also are working on making new programs and projects to bridge those gaps and relieve bottlenecks and strengthen the food system. And this really covers almost every part of USDA. I think six out of our 7 missionaries are involved in this work. So what I'd like to do today is just share with you some of the key areas that we're doing to promote the food system transformation and also local and regional food systems. But it's by no means an exhaustive list of what we're doing, because that could probably take me like a couple more hours to go through the 48 different projects that we have. But let me hit on a few highlights. So one of the areas is we are providing more than $1 billion, so that's with a B, worth of funding for food production. And so that covers supporting organic transition and certification, first food safety cost share, urban agriculture, farm and food worker relief, kind of those areas. And just as an example, you know, as we at USDA are trying to help create more climate smart agricultural commodities, we need to invest more in organic agriculture production because of its contribution to sustainable food production. But it's a really hard process to become an organic process producer. So what we're doing is looking for ways that we can help make that process a little less complicated, help with some of the financial costs to transition over to organic, and make that just a little bit easier to bear. So there's a whole $300 million effort just around organic transition that we will be providing more details on very soon, hopefully sometime this month. But one thing that we have heard from our stakeholders and you know, around the country as we've been talking about food systems transformation is that it's that middle part of the supply chain. So the processing, aggregation, distribution, cold storage, all of that, that's really what's really constricted. It's almost like an hourglass figure in our system, in our supply chain. And so we're putting a lot of the resources into what we can do to expand that middle out more. So we can talk about meat and poultry processing, right? So there are 4 large meat packing companies that control 85% of the beef market, that controls 70% of pork, more than half of poultry. And at the same time, Americans are paying more for food, farmers' profits have gone down, and industry is touting record profits. So there's something imbalance there. And so there's work that we're doing around the competition issues, and that's, you know, on the regulatory side, but we are also investing $1 billion to support the expansion of diversified, independent meat and poultry processing capacity. So one of our sister agencies, the Rural Business Cooperative Services under the Rural Development Mission Area, they've developed several meat and poultry processing expansion grant or programs. So there are grants involved, there's an intermediary lending program there, there's a loan guarantee program, and all of those can be used to support projects that, again, expand independent meat and poultry processing capacity. So we're talking about small and mid-sized, not like the big four type of projects. The agricultural marketing service, which is falls within my mission area, is also granting more than $55 million to help meat and poultry slaughter and processing facilities, help them get a federal grant of inspection or to operate a state inspected facility. So that's our meat and poultry inspection readiness grant program. We've also, because money isn't the only problem, it's also helping applicants and projects get through these, navigate the federal grant system and navigate their projects. We've also invested $25 million into a technical assistance program. And so we've created a network that will make sure that participants in all of these initiatives that we're talking about for meat and poultry actually have access to a full range of technical assistance to support their project development and to help them succeed. And so we're designing this program and have designed it to make sure that it works for all the producers, small, mid-sized, again, right out of the starting blocks. But it's not just about meat and poultry. We are also working on $600 million in financial assistance to support the food supply chain that's not covered by the meat and poultry program that we have. So we're going to be making investments that will address limited processing capacity for fruits and vegetables, other specialty crops for distribution, storage, aggregation capacity for a variety of food sectors. And that will include, addressing some of the issues like the high equipment costs, like the lack of competition and the limited supply chain and value chain coordination. And so, a lot of producers, especially I think small and beginning farmers and ranchers, really have been gravitating towards local and regional markets. And I think that's because market accessibility, there's a promise of greater portion of the food dollar and a greater benefit to the community. So just as an example, I'm sure I don't need to tell y'all, but over the past few years, we've seen some great results and great successes from funding that we've given to the Community Farm Alliance in Kentucky through the Farmers Market Promotion Program. And so our funding allowed the Alliance to provide technical support to 21 farmers markets. And then they were able to collectively increase their participant sales from $1.3 million to $16.9 million. There's 114 new jobs were created and 118 underserved farmers were also able to enter the local food production system. And so again, in the marketing and regulatory programs mission area and with the agricultural marketing service, we really want to support and keep building towards more market access and food supply chain development here in the US and also internationally. And we do that by bringing people together. We provide research and data. We also provide, again, technical assistance, funds for these local and regional food systems. And we buy local and regional foods through our procurement programs. And so we're investing a lot to strengthen our local and regional food system. So let me give you some more numbers of some more programs that we were adding funding to that are some are open and some are coming still. So we have added $130 million to the local food promotion program and to the regional food system partnership program. And that is really intended to help expand and strengthen opportunities for local and regional food producers to sell to institutions like universities, to hospitals, to other settings that could be operated by your local or tribal or state governments. And I know that the regional food system partnership grants are an important part of the work that's happening in your part of the country. I think the Appalachian Sustainable Development is working with many of you to expand these value chains in Central Appalachia. We're also making $400 million available to states and tribes through the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement Program. We call it LFPA for short, because that's a lot of words. But that again is meant to support local, regional, and underserved farmers and ranchers by having funds for the state to purchase local foods that are healthy and nutritious and unique to the area. And those products are then distributed to underserved communities through food banks, food pantries, and other assistance programs. I know we've already signed agreements with Ohio and West Virginia and a bunch of other states, and hopefully the other parts of Central Appalachia will be signing on soon too. So stay tuned for those. It's very exciting. We also have a similar program that we're calling Local Food for Schools, also a cooperative agreement program. That's $200 million where states can purchase food for schools, also from local, regional, and underserved farmers and ranchers. We aren't all doing this alone. We also have the Food Nutrition Service, another sister agency at USDA. They're going to be rolling out $60 million in grants to states and territories to administer their farm to school programs and really, continue to support increased procurement and the use of local foods in child nutrition programs. FNS also has a $100 million grant program to help expand the reach of emergency food systems in underserved areas. So, remote, rural, tribal, low income, low food access communities through their TFAP Reach and Resiliency grants. And we've got $370 million to support other nutrition assistance programs, healthy food retail, especially in food desert areas, and improve the nutritional quality of school meals. So there's a ton of funding that we're putting out there, but one of the really important components to ensuring that all of these businesses and programs really thrive and succeed is to provide them with business technical assistance and coordination support and capacity building support. So what we're doing is we're going to be announcing very soon a $400 million program to establish what we're calling USDA Regional Food Business Centers. And it'll do just that. These will be centers that provide coordination, that provide technical assistance, capacity building support, especially to small and mid-sized food and farm businesses, and really focused again on that kind of middle of the supply chain processing, distribution, aggregation, and market access challenges. And these centers, for us, it's important that they're focused on serving underserved communities. And it will be a way for them to provide, because we'll have the geographic regions kind of tailored, and they will be, really focused on developing and investing in the needs in their area, in that region, because it's different all over. And so really recognizing that our resilient supply chains are built on strong relationships between individuals, among communities, regions, sectors, institutions. And so really stay tuned. I'm again hoping in the next month or so that we will be announcing what we're doing to build the regional centers. So it's a new era, I think, for local and regional food systems. We are really focused on building again from the bottom up and the middle out for this fair and competitive and distributed and resilient food system. And so our mission is really to play a role in helping move this work forward, and are really eager to work with communities like y'all's who share this common vision for the food system and engage and make that really possible at the ground level. So I know I've only mentioned a portion of the $4 billion effort that we've got around this system, and I've run down a long list of programs and numbers that are open and are probably some may be interesting to y'all. So if you get nothing else from me today, here's the most important thing to take away. We have pooled all this information together on a website in one place so that you can go there, you can check out, see what we've got coming, what's open, deadlines, how to get to the grants or the loans, things like that. So the website that you want to check out is usda.gov/buildbackbetter with hyphens between the build back and the better. And that's for all of our food systems transformation work. And if you are particularly interested in the meat and poultry processing work that I talked about, the competition pieces, as well as the grants and loans, we have a website that's usda.gov/meat. So those are two great resources for y'all to see what we've got. And then we'll also have links to folks that you can contact if you have questions about anything in particular. But again, thank you to all of y'all for all of the work that you're doing to help with local and regional foods in your community. And I'm happy if there's time for me to answer any questions that y'all may have.
Thank you so much, Deputy Undersecretary Wu. And if we do have time for one or two questions, please feel free to put those up in the chat, or Leslie and CAN team, if you all have anything on your mind, now's the time.
Alex, I think we did have one question from Nick Arnold, a farmer who is definitely feeling the squeeze with fertilizer and diesel expenses. So I'm not sure, Nick, if you want to unmute yourself and add anything.
Oh, hey, everyone. It wasn't really a question as much as an observation. You're discussing kind of what are the pain points for actual producers. And like I was saying in the chat, that's sort of what me and my father have experienced. That, you know, we really struggle getting spare parts right now for machinery when it breaks. Fertilizer's up like 84%. Diesel's, you know, doubled or more. So we've tried selling direct to consumer, and, you know, as other people in the chat have observed, you know, we're having to schedule 6 months out or more, you know what I mean, just to be able to sell a steer at this point to butcher.
Yeah, Nick, and that is like stories like yours are part of what, you know, I think for us was part of what drove us to say, like, we need to increase this processing capacity. We heard from some ranchers who said, I think they were waiting like 12 months, 18 months that they had to schedule out to just get space. So, you know, I think this whole idea of like increasing and diversifying the options that we have for our farmers and ranchers and for our consumers is really how we're going to make this system a little more resilient. There's also, I know there's a fertilizer program that other parts of USDA are also working on. I don't know anything about the details of that, so I can't talk about it, but I know that is another area that we've heard about and are working on. So there's a lot I know that there's a lot going on out there. It's the supply chain just needs help, and we're doing what we can here.
Well, let's maybe take one more question from Patty Miller, our colleague in West Virginia. I'm wondering, Patty, if you want to unmute. Your question was about regional center locations.
Yes. Thank you. The question that's on my mind is, how will the decisions about, like, I'm really thrilled to hear about the regional organizations. How will decisions about where they're to be located and how local voices will plug into those, what's that going to look like, please?
Yeah, so we're hopefully going to be putting out the request for applications again, I'm hoping in the next month or two or so. So you'll see a lot more details there on which regions we're looking at. But like I said, we do really want to focus particularly on certain underserved regions. So you may guess that we might be looking, especially in Appalachia, maybe in the Delta region, maybe colonious areas, maybe tribal areas, you know, those that really do need. So we'll be looking at, we'll be getting applications in, hopefully from, you know, partners on the ground who say, like, you know, we are able to support this region in this way. And then there'll be a selection process based on, you know, what people are putting in their applications and who can best serve the needs. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, you know, and I think that y'all probably have many potential folks who might be interested in applying to be one of running those centers. So definitely sign up for updates, and we'll let you know as soon as that request for applications is out.
Thank you.
And then Martin, I see you have your hand raised. Do you have one quick question before we segue?
It's not a question, it's a comment. So I really appreciate, you know, Nick and Molly and Danielle for their comments in the chat. You know, so I'm on a task force to inform the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. And so, you know, what is coming out of today is going to be forwarded through that task force to the White House. So I appreciate these comments. There will be other opportunities later on today through Jam boards for other comments to be posted in there. And again, we're gonna send those forward. So I appreciate all this, because the White House really wants to hear the voices of those most impacted.
It helps if I unmute. Okay. So this has been wonderful. Thank you, Deputy Undersecretary Wu. We really appreciate USDA's participation. Big thanks again to Alex for helping as a co-organizer. And I know we have many other folks on the Zoom this morning from USDA as well. So we would be very interested in hearing more in depth over the next 5 summits, some of the other programs or priorities from USDA. We're ready to share our expertise. So tap into us, of course. Okay, thanks so much. So yeah, it's more Leslie now. We're going to segue into another PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to pull that up on the screen here. But you will be hearing from 4 different presenters from the Appalachian Accessible Food Network. And let me see, I'm always challenged when I'm multitasking here. But basically what we're trying to provide, I think that didn't work, did it? Is a great example of how networks work. So this is a presentation that will be led by 4 presenters. Why am I not seeing slideshow? Someone help me. I hate Google Slides.
Far right, Leslie. All the way down there at the end, slideshow.
Oh, Molly, there it is. I'm just so inept when it comes to Google Slides. So again, case model of a healthy food value chain. So this has been work that has been supported by many stakeholders throughout the region in southeastern Ohio. But the presenters you're going to hear from this morning are Tom Redfern, the Rural Action Sustainable Ag Director, Molly Sowash, the Sustainable Ag Manager, myself, the Director of Programs at ACENET, and Mary Beth Salim Tanner, the Community Food Initiatives Executive Director. And I think what we really want to do today is quickly share this model that we have been working on, and again, with many other partners that are not listed, but you can find out more. We have a lot of publications, videos, and other resources that you can link to at the end of the slideshow. But just a little background, the Appalachian Accessible Food Network, often referred to by our acronym AAFN, is a partnership that was formalized in 2014 to accelerate the distribution of local foods into low wealth and underserved Appalachian Ohio communities. The Appalachian Ohio local food systems, have been a driving force in the region's economic revitalization. The 3 anchor organizations have all played, I would say, considerable roles in making this happen since the 1980s and the 1990s. So what AAFN is really making sure happens is that this growing demand for local, fresh, and affordable food reaches everyone, underscore everyone in our rural communities. So we've been able to leverage donations, sponsorships. Many of us have different programs or projects for revenue generation. And then, as always, as nonprofits, we're often targeting and securing grant funding to implement a more detailed work plan. And all of this is very grounded in an equity framework. Food access, I think, is challenging throughout Central Appalachia. And what we've tried to accomplish and continue to evolve is how do we make sure this growing, vital local food economy touches everyone? So inclusion and resilience are integral to our shared vision. I also really want to do a shout out. Some of these folks are joining us on Zoom this morning, but this network would not be where it's at without tremendous investment. The Osteopathic Heritage Foundation of Nelsonville and the Athens County Foundation have been just year after year supporters and investors, significant investors in this work. To a large degree, when we started as anchor organizations developing the network, it was really that early stage funding that helped us to come up with a work plan in 2014 and 2015. So Osteopathic Heritage Foundation of Nelsonville, I know Aaron and Cheryl are on the call, the Athens County Foundation, the Sisters Health Foundation, Sugar Bush Foundation, I think I've seen you on the call as well. Funding over time from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development and Farm Aid. And this is not an exhaustive list, but what I really want to point out is it's this philanthropic investment, as well as a lot of the small donations that community members make, the sponsorships from businesses. That has allowed us to leverage the USDA support. You know, oftentimes we need match. So to be able to really power up our programming, we would not have been able to do it without this investment from local and regional philanthropy and very generous donors within our community. So just some of the USDA programs that we've leveraged over time. You know, many of these are programs that currently fund one or many of the anchor organizations within the network. So again, thanks to everyone for that level of support and the continued support that we will need to really ramp up and expand this work. So I'm going to toss things over to Molly here. These are the network objectives. You'll see in bold some of the areas that we're really emphasizing, and you'll see this work animated through the ongoing slides. So go ahead, Molly.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Molly Sawash here from Rural Action. And I'm also a beginning farmer beef producer. So happy to see some producers on the call, having some good conversation in the chat. So our three organizations that make up this Appalachian Accessible Food Network kind of operate around these 5 objectives that touch on kind of 5 elements of the local food system: demand, volume, infrastructure, distribution, and employment. So our work is really about coordinating everyone across the food system to increase the demand for local food so that we're supporting our local farmers through food access initiatives. At the same time as we're making sure that this, beautiful, nutritious local food gets to all communities. So working to increase demand and then in response, grow the volume, and working with producers and consumers to make sure there's sufficient volume of a variety of fresh, healthy foods here. And of course, as demand and volume grows, making sure that the infrastructure is there and sufficient and constantly improving in order to meet that, to be able to grow, to process and distribute those foods. And I just touched on distribution, ensuring that, once those local foods are grown and brought to market, that they're also distributed out to all rural communities. And then through this building of the local food system, increasing employment opportunities, and I want to highlight ownership opportunities for underserved individuals, thinking about what real meaningful and sustainable livelihoods exist as many of our communities transition from a coal-based economy to a diversified economy.
I don't know if we all have permissions to advance the slides. So what we're going to do first is hear from the 3 anchor organizations within the network, and Rural Action is going to start out. So more conversation with Tom and Molly.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. I'm Tom Redfern. I'm the Director of Sustainable Agriculture with Rural Action. So Rural Action is a membership economic development agency that uses the tenets of asset-based community development to uplift our economy. So our mission is to build a more just economy by developing the region's assets in ways that are environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable. Next slide. Rural Action is made up of multiple
Hello?
program areas, as you can
Is there
see.
anything new?
So our program is sustainable agriculture, and what we focus on is processing, aggregation, distribution, and education. Next slide. So the processing we talk about is like farm to school, principally. So you can see here's a group of workers for multiple schools. We buy in season at peak season. We freeze and process in other ways, often in partnership with AceNet, utilizing their shared use facilities, and we distribute it to the schools when they're open. Next slide. So here's more of the processing, which is a piece also of our farm to institution work. So we focus on procurement, processing, and distribution of fresh and processed local produce to K through 12 schools, to universities, to healthcare providers, and doing training for employees who work in the kitchens of the schools to help them know how to use local produce. So real quick with the farm to institution also, we've partnered extensively with Ohio University. We meet regularly through our Farm to Ohio working group. And with farm to institution, the trick is to get on the same table, so to speak, with all of the people involved, so people know each other's perspectives and can all work together. Next slide. The big piece we do is aggregation. So early on with farm to institution, we recognized that we needed to bring together small producers to build the supply if we wanted to serve bigger markets like institutions. So here's a picture of the Chester Hill Produce Auction. During COVID, you could see all the food we were still moving with masks on and being safe. And the Chester Hill Produce Auction is a social enterprise of rural action, and it's basically put over $3 million since about 2005 into the local economy of Morgan County. And thanks to Nick Arnold for the shout out. Next slide. So here's some more pictures focused on aggregation. You can see we built and expanded the food hub. But when we say we built, the producers who use the auction have been the ones to come together to build it, literally, with hammers and nails, and donated labor and time. So you can see the numbers here. 200 producers, 50 wholesale buyers, many retail consumers, and $400,000 in annual sales of specialty crops. So we are proud of this work. Next slide. So processing, aggregation, distribution. Here's a picture of us in our refrigerated van, bringing produce from the produce auction to the Southeast Ohio Food Bank, who like most of the food banks throughout the country are in short supply. So it's been really advantageous for them and for us that we can get together and work with them to supply a small piece, at least, of the needs. Next. Distribution, here's some of the partners we distribute to. This year, we're taking to 11 different counties in Southeast Ohio and West Virginia. So it's a busy season for us, but it's important work. You can see all the hands that make it happen. Next slide.
Jump in and talk a little bit about our education work, which really crosses a lot of into different audiences. So throughout the slides, Tom's been talking about working through education with K through 12 employees, volunteers we train on processing skills, food safety for producers, but this sort of piece is more about our education work with beginning farmers and established farmers. So you can see here a longtime farm partner, Green Edge Gardens, that has since retired, but they did some amazing high tunnel production and winter growing. And this is one of those workshops. Next slide. So our whole farm project, which is something we've been kind of building out, we hope to offer like wraparound support for beginning farmers. And our strategy is to really zero in on peer-to-peer education and mentorship so that we can pay established producers who have experience and wisdom to share to be the educator in the room, or to be a one-on-one mentor, to lead workshops, and to be compensated for their intellectual capital to help build this small farm community. So that involves an annual mentorship series and business planning series, as well as workshops on farms. And then some other more individualized assistance like one-on-one site visits, forest management plans, and including non-timber forest management planning. Given our high percentage of forested area here in Southeast Ohio, we work with a lot of forest farmers in agroforestry. And then access to capital, access to land. We're growing into some silvopasture support and micro grants for farmers, on-farm solar support, as well as some tree plantings alongside our watershed program. And I think I just skipped over access to professional services. So time with an accountant, time with a lawyer, things that you really just need one-on-one time with. So here are some photos of our workshops and our crew attending OFA, which is always a great learning experience for us. Down in the bottom right, one of our GAP certification classes, so good agricultural practices for producers. I'll drop a link in the chat for more about this, but this is just a taste of it.
So thanks, Molly and Tom. I'm going to quickly do some sort of higher level overview of ACENET. As a community-based economic development organization, we've been working in the region, first headquartered in Athens County since 1985. And I think what's just at the core of the ACENET DNA is building networks. We want to support innovation. We want to facilitate collaboration. So these have always been our core values to do this work. But probably what ACENET is oftentimes best known for, I think, is our food system and food sector entrepreneurship work. So developing processing infrastructure early on in the 90s was a need we heard over and over and over again from both food and farm entrepreneurs, that they needed really a subsidized support system that would help all of us shoulder the risk to be able to do value-added ag products, to allow entrepreneurs to get started, often a more toe-in-the-water approach to market development. So our Food Ventures Center opened in 1996. It's a little over 12,000 square foot food processing facility, but holds a variety of different licenses. So it's been the facility that really, I would say, has probably had the most impact within the production and processing economy here in Southeastern Ohio. We've had over 400 tenants use this facility. That said, we physically expanded the square footage in 1999, but almost by the mid-aughts, we outgrew the capacity based on the demand of folks needing to either expand their businesses that they had started in our facility, or the continual new pipeline of entrepreneurs wanting to do processing, aggregation, or distribution. You'll notice in all our slideshows, lots of photographs of the work of the folks. I mean, this is a network, and this is how we animate this network. It's lots of passionate individuals, community members who want to create a robust food economy here in Southeastern Ohio. And I think, you know, when we look at the aggregation and distribution needs, ACENET, as well as Rural Action and Community Food Initiatives, we recognize that the Food Ventures Center was just extremely limited. So in 2004, ACENET had secured another business incubator complex in the city of Nelsonville, which is at the northern end of Athens County. 100,000 square feet of one of our buildings has now been transformed, probably to date about 20,000 square feet that we are using for processing, aggregation, and distribution. So just some examples of some of the users within the Nelsonville facility. But I think all along the pivot point for AceNet, as Molly highlighted, is being full service to our food and farm entrepreneurs. So it wasn't just creating the physical infrastructure, it was also helping folks access markets at a local, regional, national, even international level. And I think what's been really important, really underpins all this work around food access is that market opportunities for many of our processors and producers, the fact that they are so immersed within this larger stakeholder network has allowed them to be very generous and provide a lot of leadership. So whether it's the donation station at CFI, whether it's assisting the farmers markets, be able to include more benefits like SNAP, like WIC, Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program coupons. Those have all been important technical assistance interventions that AceNet staff have helped forward. And then again, I just want to honor and acknowledge the work of our entrepreneurs. You know, these are the folks who get up every day, who work well with one another, who help each other in terms of accessing markets, help with the formation of farmers markets, other social enterprise entities where collaboration happens. So whether it's our farmers of multiple generations, whether it's our local food entrepreneurs, the fact that folks are working together, oftentimes in shared facilities or doing distribution projects together or helping each other enter new markets, this is the network weaving that is so critical to the work that we do. In recent years, we've also recognized that as this food sector has grown, that if we're really going to address food insecurity in our region, then we need to think about the creation of sustainable rural livelihoods. And we need to make sure that we're touching folks in all of our workforce programs who maybe have been left out of the mainstream. So we've been doing a lot of partnerships with Star Community Justice Center in Nelsonville. We're embarking on a new partnership with the Survivors Outreach Advocacy Program. And this is enabling AceNet again through partnerships to maximize how space gets utilized. It's been win-win for many of our employers who are tenants within our facilities. And now we're seeing some of our folks who have been incarcerated now as they're released back into the community. Many of them are starting either their own food businesses or becoming employees in some of the network food employment opportunities within the region. So I'm going to pass now to Mary Beth, and she's going to talk a little bit about Community Food Initiative's role in the network.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Salim Tanner. I'm the Executive Director at Community Food Initiatives. So CFI is a small community-based grassroots nonprofit. Our offices are housed within the AceNet Food Venture Center, and we partner really closely with all the members of this network, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that works as we go. But CFI's vision is a resilient region in which everyone in our community has access to an equitable, inclusive, and thriving local food system. Next slide, please. So we do a variety of programs that really, when we think about kind of all the pieces that the different partners are describing today, a lot of our work at CFI is sort of taking it in some ways that last mile to really be truly equitable. Like, where is the space, the gap where all of this beautiful, bountiful produce, all of these amazing educational opportunities, all of this really intensive, wonderful community development work we're always looking and saying, where's kind of that last connection point that it might be really easy to lose, right? Where is that last sort of link that we can make to make sure that this is really getting to every community, to every person, to every piece. And so CFI's work really sort of crosses these three areas of emergency food access and food equity through Donation Station and Veggie Van. Those are our food access programs. I'll talk a little bit more about those. We do community and school gardens. So that's really focusing on education, empowerment, and the individual level, and really thinking about where self-provisioning fits into this community food system and how we also build that up at the same time that we're thinking about, larger scale producers and regional networks. And then thinking about how we engage the grassroots level, the folks who are experiencing food insecurity, wellness challenges, all these pieces, really in feeding knowledge back into the system. And so this sort of pyramid here, we work a lot in the emergency food system, in food access. And what we're always trying to do is think about how do we complement the system that maybe tends to be the default, where folks are sort of seeing, okay, people need food, we need to put food in bellies, we need to put calories in households, and oftentimes that's going to be a lot of shelf stable, highly available, kind of standardized large quantities, and we understand that that has a part in it. But what CFI is trying to do is sort of complement that work, partner in that work, and say, okay, well, how do we make sure that we are also addressing needs for wellness, but investing back into the community? Because a lot of those resources that just move food as quickly and cheaply as possible into people's hands are necessary, but they're not really building up the local economy in a way that's going to help prevent these same issues, in the future. So we're saying, how can we really invest at the bottom up at the same time that we're addressing those immediate needs? And so just like Undersecretary Wu was talking about, how do we always build bottom up, middle out? Next slide. So when we talk about equitable access at CFI, there are at least kind of three ways we think about this. We think about equitable access to fresh, healthy local food. And so the donation station, which a couple of people mentioned, is a mechanism where we collect money and produce donations. So we take donations from local gardeners who grow in their own land, but we also collect money and food at the Athens Farmers Market. And we have a table at that beautiful Chester Hill produce auction. You all saw that auction floor full of amazing produce. So we partner with Rural Action to be able to have a table at that produce auction twice a week, where we are both bidding and actually purchasing food that then we're redistributing. And we're also letting people, maybe they buy a lot with 20 heads of cabbage and they need 5. And so 15, instead of being wasted or composted or otherwise not utilized, can go into that emergency food network. So our goal is that we collect that food and we invest directly with local growers and producers. And then we partner with a network of pantries, meal programs, and get that food back out to those in the community that are experiencing food insecurity. And Tom talked about working with the Southeast Ohio Food Bank directly. And so a lot of how CFI's role has evolved is thinking about, we distribute anywhere between 10 and 30 pantry partners a week, depending on the season, and week to week. And a lot of the folks we're serving now are libraries, really small community centers, church pantries, right? Like organizations that are not going to access that more formal network, but still are sort of seeing folks and getting food out to folks. So we are distributing in these sort of small lots, like a box at a time, 50, 60 pounds at a time every week to get that local food out to people. We also work on geographic access. The Veggie Van is a pop-up mobile donation-based farm stand that takes food that we source from the Chester Hill Produce Auction and takes it out to small communities that are geographically distant from our main farmers market. And so folks there may not have as easy access to fresh local produce and maybe in food deserts. And then we really think about also land and resource access through gardens and education. So folks that may want to be growing and self-provisioning, but because of, we have a lot of folks who rent, we have some people in apartment communities, we just have folks that, may not have the resources to have tools and water. So we coordinate 3 public and 1 in partnership with our local housing authority community garden spaces, where we work with individual gardeners to help them have access to plots, materials, and support, as well as build community. Next slide. We work on inclusive education, and so that is really thinking about how are we both sort of sharing out knowledge and building on the community assets that already exist. So we do a public school-based curriculum where we're taking first graders out into school gardens, and we also serve as a resource for schools that want to have school gardens. I was just talking to someone recently who said, school gardens are great, but like they're really hard because the time when all the produce is coming in is when no one is working at the school. So some of our, work is saying, okay, well, how can we help recruit families who want to take a week in the garden? How can we make sure that happens? How can we sort of create those links that help systems continue to function? And so bringing kids into the garden, doing school-based work is really important. We also do community-based garden workshops. We engage college students. We have a university here, but just getting people out, getting their hands in the dirt, getting them talking to each other, like Molly was talking about with rural actions programs, really using the local expertise and just helping connect as many people as possible to those assets that already exist. We also do a program called Nourishing Networks, where we are bringing in people together to talk about food insecurity and doing education kind of bottom up and saying, what are you seeing in your communities? What's already there? How can we support and grow what's happening? So we're asking community members to educate each other and educate us so that we can do this work better. Next slide. All of this, and this is really going to sort of transition into our talk about AAFN as a whole. CFI, we have 5 people who work here, right? And we move 70 to 100,000 pounds of food each year through donation station. Our goal is to serve 1,000 customers this year through the veggie van. We work with a variety of, 200 to 300 students a year. So the only way that we can do that scope of work in our community is through partnerships. So we are working directly with farmers and producers, helping really connect them into those food systems and those needs. We're investing financially by spending that money that people donate right back in with local producers. We invest $10,000 to $15,000 a year directly with farmers and producers through that work, but we're also investing in relationships, getting to know people, getting to know what they grow, when they grow it, knowing who we can call when a pantry calls us and says, we need apples. We have 4 people we can call and kind of figure out how we make those connections. And we're always working to evolve to meet emerging needs. The nice thing about being small, CFI is small, and it means we're adaptable and we're nimble and we can see a need and kind of move toward it. The really important thing for us of being nested in this network is we have the resources, the support, and the connections of organizations that are well established, have infrastructure, have knowledge, have partnerships that then we can be part of and pull on. So everything we do is always in partnership. And last CFI slide. Our goal is to grow and share in a way that serves the whole community. So all this work, we're doing waste reduction, we're doing food security and wellness, we're working on environmental conservation by helping people garden in environmentally responsible ways, but this is all about community building and relationships. So our goal is to say, all this stuff is already here, right? We have amazing resources, we have so much knowledge, we have so much beautiful produce. So how do we serve as that connector that gets it from one place to the other and makes the most of what we have? So I think we are going to pause here. And I know there are some questions that went into the chat, but particularly I think if people have questions for the partnering organizations about kind of any of that individual level work. And Leslie, I don't know if you're going to kind of facilitate the Q&A. I think people could either unmute or put some questions in the chat.
Yeah, let's just take maybe 2 questions. We're running a little long. We got a little late start, so we'll continue to scrunch the agenda here. But why don't people just unmute and we'll see if we avoid havoc of people speaking over one another. So if you have a question, please also maybe say if it's directed to all of us as organizations or one particular organization. So any questions? We're going to go and talk about our impacts next. So we will have some questions at the end.
Looks like
The
there's
only question I really had was about the food banks and how they're up in Northeast Ohio, they're really running bare shelved. And I was just wondering if the USDA was going to address that problem and help our local government to try to figure something out, because a lot of our participants rely on the food banks. They do, to supplement their SNAP benefits.
Looks like Tom is unmuted. Do you want to say a little bit about our HAPCAP and food bank relationship?
Sure, as I mentioned earlier, we recognize that it's a big problem. So in early 2022, we made a contract with the Southeast Ohio Food Bank where they were able to leverage local non-federal funding to make a contract with us to supply from the produce auction. So maybe, you know, looking at local produce auctions, maybe up in Northeast Ohio, or food hubs, or, you know, thinking outside the federal box. Looking to local philanthropy might be what we have to do to plug the gap right now as we wait for the federal programs to kick in. And I think there's a question for Mary Beth.
Thanks, I answered that a little bit in the chat. Elizabeth asked a really good question about how we decide what efforts to steward. And so I did make a couple comments on that in the chat, and I'm happy to talk more offline with anybody specifically too. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to move us on. You know, and I just, again, want to highlight why networks matter. You can see how each of the organizations' work has some similarities and synergy, but I think what really makes a difference within the Appalachian Accessible Food Network is we're each bringing skill sets, we're bringing expertise from other partners, we're using all the assets to the best of our ability in a way that really leverages and doesn't duplicate. So I think with networks, we accomplish together what we could not manage as an individual organization. You'll also notice just from all the slides, there's tremendous amount of collaboration that networks engender. So there's a lot of community members and stakeholders who participate in our programs and services. I think it enables all of us at all levels to be wise stewards of the investment that we are able to secure. So as nonprofit anchor organizations, I think that holds each of us accountable to make sure that as we plan and coordinate together, that we're stretching what sometimes feels like scarce resources. And then I think it also enables us to take risks that we might not be willing to take on our own. So that ability for peer exchange, for peer learning, you know, provides a support to take risks, to be more innovative. And then whether we're using social media, whether we're doing sort of groundwork within our communities, it really demonstrates that we're lifting a shared voice and that we're trying together to build a healthy and more resilient ecosystem. Early on, when CFI, Rural Action, ACENET, and the Southeast Ohio Regional Food Bank, as well as another partner, Live Healthy Appalachia, developed sort of, I would say, a shared vision for this work. we really looked at demand channels. So you've heard certainly in each of our slideshows a little bit of entry point, I guess, for your understanding of the donation station, the food hubs, all of our farm to school work. We've seen a lot of new farmers markets now pop up within these Appalachian Ohio counties that we're all playing a role in supporting. And then the mobile markets, the country fresh stops, all of these create access points. And as demand channels, we need to be able to make sure that their ability, especially in these COVID times, to secure local food is a responsibility that we want to really work on. So I'm going to go through this stuff pretty quick, and we're going to bounce back and forth. At the end of last year, we put a more in-depth publication together, which was almost a 7-year retrospective, especially of the incredible investment that we received over time from the Osteopathic Heritage Foundation of Nelsonville. So if you'd like a copy, we can, many of our websites have links to that publication, or you can email any one of us and we can send it. So all of these metrics are going to be in that publication. But I think, if we're just looking at this by the numbers, what we've been able to do with the Food Ventures Center and the Food and Farm Enterprise Center in Nelsonville has just really continued to evolve infrastructure that we need to create a robust local food economy, but it also has enabled us to really make sure that there is healthy food accessible to all members of our community. So Molly and Tom, I know you highlighted some of the CPA impacts earlier, but is there anything you'd really like to call out maybe from this slide?
So here's a good look at the auction in September. Plus, we didn't mention that we have an incubator farm out there where people can use a piece of land. And we're also looking at other infrastructure, like we're building a dry kiln for lumber processing. Wood products is a big piece of what we do out there too. So the Chester Hill Produce Auction is like $10 acres in rural Morgan County that we're trying to build into like a campus of profit centers and education. But the core is the food hub aspect with the distribution to feed the demand networks that Leslie touched on is a big piece of it. That's it.
Yeah, and I'll just touch briefly on the farm to school work. And I'm also trying to upload our 7-year retrospective into the chat. So potentially you could just download it from there. But just some of the numbers over the past 7 years, we've worked with 8 districts that involve 30 schools. And a lot of this has been processing with lots of amazing volunteers. But part of our farm to school work is also some education. So that picture of Eleanor in the top right there, one of our AmeriCorps members, is from our annual field trip to the auction to connect local second graders to this rural food hub. And they're planting potatoes in our incubator farm that Tom mentioned. So we have around 600 second graders that come out every year for that. We participate in Ohio's Apple Crunch Day in the fall and get about 5,000 apples out to 12 schools every year. And then in addition to kind of hustling and slinging the produce, we also work on training and education with cafeteria staff and professional development to learn knife skills or to co-design seasonal menus utilizing local produce.
And then Mary Beth, maybe underscore some of those big numbers there from the donation station.
Right. Yeah. And the donation station. So this is the program we mentioned where we're sourcing food from the farmers market and from the produce auction and getting it out to the pantry network. And again, you can see, this is a program that really started as a community-based initiative where someone was at the farmers market and saw at the end of the market, there was all this food that farmers didn't want to haul back and just started driving things in a truck, right? And so now we are doing an average of about 70,000 pounds a year. Maybe the only thing I really do want to notice on here when you look at this bar graph is 2020, right? So in the height of the pandemic, we partnered through SEO Food Bank, Southeast Ohio Food Bank, and we were really able to use this sort of existing infrastructure, the AceNet facilities, the produce auction, all these networks, and sort of respond to that need in a really immediate way by just moving food through this system that was set up. So that, I think, ability to take the relationships and the connections and the network work that's been done and then respond in a really timely way to sort of real-time needs is a really important piece of this work. So yeah, we don't want to keep distributing 100,000 pounds of food a year. That was a lot, but we are hoping to settle back down into being a piece of that overall food assistance network and maintaining right around those 2021 levels. And then as we're switching over to community and school gardens, again, we kind of mentioned this. The only other thing I wanted to highlight here that we haven't talked about already, Alyssa asked in the chat and mentioned the idea of culturally appropriate food. And the Discovery Kitchen is a project that we really use to try and respond to this, right? Because it's all well and good for us to distribute a bag of beautiful local produce. But if folks haven't had kind of the opportunity or, just aren't in a place where that's food that's familiar to them or appealing to them, trying to go directly to pantries, go to community sites and cook along with people and hear their feedback of how they use things and then share that knowledge back out with people so that we're not just providing the food, but we're making the connections and making sure that that food can be used and really promoting the idea of local seasonal food as a fundamental part of our local culture and of wellness.
And I think this just demonstrates how each of the organizations have worked together too. So produce prescriptions, really a new exciting direction. Our healthcare partners, also extremely important to this work. I'm not sure, Mary Beth, if you want to say anything more. We're getting to the point that we'll have more information to share from the sort of national study on the veggie van work.
Yeah, just to say, the University of Buffalo is doing a study about the veggie van model, and we were part of that. It's mostly in more urban areas, but they were actually here this week collecting some data. So they have a wonderful resource center, University of Buffalo Veggie Van Project, with a lot of free resources for people that might want to do mobile markets.
And I'll just, oh yeah, you're good. I just don't know if we explained a little bit more about produce prescriptions and country fresh stops. So I'll be brief, but I think many people may be familiar with produce prescriptions, but what that looks like for us is a healthcare provider partner referring patients to a weekly bag of fresh local produce that we put together and distribute to 5 counties in West Virginia and 4 in Ohio. And then the country fresh stops are those kind of rural corner stores, gas stations, pharmacies that we supply with the fresh produce to have in areas that are considered food deserts. Just wanted to add that piece.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Molly. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then I think, we've highlighted this, but I think it was the strength of the network and certainly all the partnerships within the network, all the community buy-in within the network that allowed us to do a pretty rapid pivot to respond to the COVID challenges we faced, especially early on in 2020. People have heard me say this many times, so apologies, but we travel at the speed of trust. And what networks enable us to do is really build that track record of trust, to have deep relationships, to be on the same page in terms of our vision and values within the region. So this has enabled us to innovate. And I think, if there is a silver lining in terms of what we've learned these last couple of years, it gave us that sense of acknowledgement that the work that we do is particularly meaningful, and that we have incredible, particularly food and farm entrepreneurs who day in, day out give back to make sure that as we build a local regional food economy, that it's inclusive for all. So we'll continue to evolve and expand. This, we know, was kind of a very quick overview. There's lots of resources out there that we would love to share. We'll have links to a lot of this information. We would love to take a deeper dive with any of you, if you're interested in how can I replicate the donation station in my community. If you would like to come and visit any of our food hubs, we definitely love to work regionally throughout Central Appalachia, especially as CAN members, and as very strong leaders within the food and ag system working groups. So, what's next? I mean, networks nourish what we often refer to as the new normal. And it takes a lot of people, and it's at all nodes of the value chain, from production to processing to markets to distribution, to working with local customers to make sure that they're getting what they need within this fair food system. So again, I'm trying to keep us on time. We'll maybe go, Jennifer, just maybe about 5 minutes over before we go to our break. But are there any other questions? Again, feel free to unmute yourself. I don't know if Molly or Tom or Mary Beth, if you've been following the chat very closely, if we have some additional questions maybe on our impacts or on any of our shared work or individual organizations.
Hello, this is Samantha. How are you guys doing today? I just kind of unmuted. I forgot to raise my hand. Please forgive me.
No, that's great.
You guys are doing some great work. I love the collaboration. I just had a quick question, I guess, for Molly, when she was speaking about the scripts, the prescription, the health prescriptions, and getting the local produce into the stores, so the corner stores and grocery stores. Is that donated? Are the producers donating, or are they actually, or are the vendors or the store owners purchasing? I'm just kind of curious as to, how that works.
Yeah, I'll talk about both.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. I think we didn't mention this. Molly, go ahead.
Sorry, Tom, I think had delay there. I'll talk about separately, and then Tom, please add. The country fresh shops, those rural store locations, will purchase and resell that produce. And we kind of do the work of putting the order in, mostly at the Chester Hill produce auction at wholesale prices, to pay producers for that, and then to distribute it to those locations for them to resell it. Tom, do you want to add to that before we talk about produce prescriptions? And you'll have to unmute first if you're, yeah.
Right, so produce prescriptions, we're partnering with most of the work. So all the food access work that Rural Action does is market-based. So our whole idea is to build, our demand networks, build the aggregation, by purchasing more produce. So like produce prescriptions is currently funded by 2 nonprofits, funders, foundational funders. which we partner with. But the farmers are always paid through our work.
So I have a question on the food
Does that
prescription.
answer the question?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I had one more question, but someone had, it's on a different subject, but go ahead. I'll let them.
Hey Leslie, it's Shayla here from FoodWorks. How are you?
Good.
So, we've talked about the food pharmacy interest before, and as far as the produce prescriptions and working with the providers, is this something that you're doing in conjunction with insurance companies and things like that? Is it done at that level, or is it just strictly just a partnership with providers and the funding is being covered from those local nonprofits?
It's a little bit of all of the above. Maybe Molly, you could field that a little bit.
Insurance companies have been something we have talked about approaching more and having a little more concerted efforts towards figuring that piece of it out. Right now, it's largely grant funded and working with the healthcare providers directly. Although we have learned from other produce prescriptions across the country, like I think there's one in California that's, I think 100% insurance company funded. So that's a learning curve for us. Right now, it's just, we're at the beginning of that curve.
Okay. I would, I know Leslie, you had already mentioned it, but if you could definitely tie me in with some of that stuff, that's something that, I'm very interested in. I'm starting with the networking here in our area specifically. So.
Yeah, and again, these summits to a large extent we're hoping an entry point for people to become more engaged in the Central Appalachian Network food and ag working groups, because that's where a lot of the best practices and the, sometimes the hits and misses that we experience within either our individual sub-regional practice works or not. So I would really encourage people not just to connect with maybe partners in your subregion, but to really check out the food and ag working groups, because then we're learning from a larger peer network. It's professionally revolutionized my life for the last 30 years. I'll do that testimonial.
I could believe it. So the last question for the prescriptions, are they private providers, or are you partnering with like the county and some of the nonprofit existing providers?
Go for it, Tom.
Right now, they're private. They're federally qualified healthcare providers.
Okay, thank you.
Hopewell Health Systems in Ohio and Copeland, COPLIN, Health Services in West Virginia.
And then Samantha, did you have another follow-up question?
I did, but I looked through those resources that you provided with the your 7-year plan, and it answered all of them. So thank you anyway for that resource.
Yeah, sure thing.
Right. And then this last slide just has, links. Obviously, we'll continue to provide information throughout these summits, but definitely, visit us as individual organizations through our websites and social media. Because we're looking for that rainbow, at the end of this journey, or this ongoing journey of this work that we're all doing together to create a fair food system. So thanks to all our presenters. Thanks to all our great attendance and questions. And we're almost getting back on time. Jennifer, are you out there? I'm going to pass the facilitation on to you.
I am here. Thank
Yay.
you. And wow, what inspiring work. Thank you for sharing. I am Jennifer Weber, and I work with Community Farm Alliance, and I live just outside of Hazard, Kentucky. And we've experienced a little bit of flooding, and so my internet and electricity have been off and on this morning, which is what Leslie was referring to. But we're going to take an active break right now. And we've heard some really inspiring work this morning, but we also know there's a lot of other inspiring, good work going on in the region. And we want to give y'all a chance to share what you're doing. So we're going to start off with doing 2 polls. And let me get the first one launched. We're going to do 2 polls to kind of see who's in the room, or give a little bit more information about who is in the room. And then we're going to go to a Jamboard where folks can add in information about what they're doing, thoughts on what a healthy, what a fair food system looks like. And during that time, we're going to put some music on. You can step away, refill that cup of coffee, take care of whatever else you need to, and then we'll come back and go into our equity session. So we will give this just a little bit more time. Looks like we have a lot of rural folks. And a lot of places where local food is up and coming. So we'll give this about another 10 seconds. Oh, we still have some answers coming in. Okay. I'm going to end this now and share these results. Again, it looks like we've got a lot of folks from rural areas where local food is up and coming. It's good to see that local food has yet to generate much interest is the smallest group. That's exciting. And then let's get our second poll up. And we'll launch this. So it's all about what perspective you are bringing to this summit. About 10 more seconds. I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Looks like we have a lot of nonprofit folks. I am among the nonprofits and a good number of farmers, so that's exciting to see here. But we also have folks representing a variety of sectors, which is fabulous. So thank you for taking those polls. Right now, I am dropping a link into the chat for a Jamboard, and not used a Jamboard yet. There's some instructions for doing that on the second frame. And then just take some time to go through here. What does a healthy food value chain look like? And there's opportunities to put in what you are doing to strengthen healthy food value chains across the region, in specific states, and across the United States. So we are going to put on a little music We're going to put on a little music and let's come back in 15 minutes at about 11:29. We'll take a look at what we put on the board and then move into our equity panel. So thank you very much.
And if possible, I hope people can just stay in also.
Yes.
If you need to leave and then re-enter, that's cool too. But you got to stay for the next panel for sure.
Oh, it is exciting. Yeah. So just, yeah, mute yourself, take yourself off of camera and join us back in 15 minutes. But also spend some time working on the Jamboard. got about 5 minutes left. So if you want to make certain that you get your ideas and what you're working on onto the Jamboard, and refill that cup of coffee if you need to. Okay, thank you so much. This is, as much as I was inspired by our last presentation, I'm even more inspired by all of this fabulous work going on around the region. Looks like a lot of work around farmer support, developing partnerships, working in the community. I'm wondering if anyone has, in the minute or so before we go to our next panel, if anyone has an observation that they want to share, feel free to drop it in the chat or unmute and speak your piece for a moment. And if you didn't see the chat, you have the link, you can continue to add, you can continue to look through and see what is happening across the region and in specific states. The dreams folks have for what a healthy food value chain looks like. There's a lot of good information here. Okay. Hearing nothing, I am going to turn it over to Martin Richards with Community Farm Alliance to moderate the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks for everybody for doing the jam boards. It's a great way, I think, to increase accessibility so everybody has an opportunity to contribute. Some of us, not me, obviously, are a little timid on Zoom. Anyway, I am going to now share my screen. So, hopefully, you're all now seeing beautiful faces of 3 lovely women. So this session is all about equity, but also, diversity, inclusion, and our panel is going to share firsthand experiences. But, I want to kind of start off with what it is and why it's important. And of course, I think for doing what is right is sounds easy, and it sounds easy to say, but not always easy to do. But it's more than that, right? And of course, a lot of times, and most of the time, when we talk about equity, we're thinking of race. But I think we also have to include class, and especially for us in the Appalachia region, right? Because all of these things and more affect the ability for everybody to participate, especially in the food system. And of course, everybody eats, so it is important that everybody has that ability. Many of us would go so far to say that food is a right. I don't think we've gotten that far yet, unfortunately, in society. But it also does so many things. And for me, I always have to go back to, the farm experience, right? Because, and I think that is certainly applicable to this conversation, because diversity also means resiliency. It also means innovation, and in terms of income and everything like that. It's about shared prosperity for everybody and lifting everybody's boats for this. And I just want to, give one example. So when I started farming, obviously I'm a white guy, right? Bought a farm and walked into the local farm service agency and, announced myself and told them what farm I bought. They immediately knew what I was talking about. And then, folks just sat down and said, okay, here are the resources that are available here. Oh, by the way, you have a corn base on your farm. So, you're going to be getting a check every year as long as this is in effect. The list went on and on. I didn't think about it, right? But now looking back some years later, it's like I walked into that office and I was immediately evaluated or got valuation as a farmer. Nobody questioned me about that, but turns out, and I think Tiffany will talk more about this, that is not the case for a lot of folks, right? I mean, I imagine that, for many women, regardless of your race, you probably experienced that same thing. And certainly if you're a farmer of color, we know that you've experienced that. We are still in the throes of systematic racism in agriculture. We don't, and it has a lot of effects, and that is a long history. I'd like to say that we all are, at all levels working to address that systematic racism. Sometimes the most challenging parts is to recognize that inequity that has been coming over the last, I don't know what's the count, 400 and some years now, right? So with that bit of an introduction, I want to turn over, and I think we will start with Tiffany, then Heather, and then Shelley, kind of starting at the beginning of the value chain and working through it. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I think, Tiff, are you ready to start sharing?
Yes, I am ready. Hey, how are you all today? Let me get the share screen up. As I get my screen up, I put together a slideshow to capture my story. I came into CFA, but I was going through so much more as a farmer before I got to CFA. And so I combined the two so you can see both lenses. So 1 second, let me get it up. All right, so this is the screen that most people see that I use when I'm speaking about equity through CFA. We work directly with Black Soil, Our Better Nature, and they are a pivotal piece of the story of what made my Black-owned farm brand actually become a nationwide brand. My title at CFA right now is Food Justice Organizer. I began 4 years ago with CFA, and I was the Northeast Farm to Table Coordinator. But before I even got with CFA, I was a farmer. I am a farmer. I was raised in rural Madison County. That was one side next to Fayette, one side next to Estill, and everything in between. We grew up tobacco farming. Never in my house did we hear about tobacco settlement funds, did not know nothing about it. I watched my grandfather really push through once tobacco crisis hit, and a lot of what happened during that time affected me as the fourth generational heir. Between the years of 2013 and 2015, I lost both my grandparents. Both grandparents owned land. Both grandparents were the stewards. They were the top of they were it. But like most people who are Black and brown who have farmland in Kentucky, that's not an uncommon conversation. There was an elder and then they died. What do we do next? Thank the Lord, my grandmother had already written it up that I would receive the land and split it with my mother. But that is a story that isn't heard a lot. Things get taken away, paperwork goes away. Certain loans are not signed over, probate court. It's a lot of things that comes with heirs loss and heirs property. So I became the fourth generational heir to steward over 20 something acres of land. During this time, before this time, I was constantly volunteering with local food. It was a big thing for me, coming the fact that I was raised in the country, but once I had my daughter, I lived in the city of Lexington. So I was on SNAP, I was on WIC. I walked into those offices feeling like I was the black sheep. And so I always advocated for food being accessible, but food also being equal, and being able to go into places and use resources. At the time, I didn't know about Kentucky Double Dollars or anything, but I knew that I could help take women into these farmers markets, into stores, and help them buy better, buy healthier, and then, of course, buy local. These pictures here are, this is the front side of my farm, me doing farm tours. And then the bottom picture is a picture of my farm when nothing was there. And these three beautiful, handsome gentlemen in the corner are the Ballou brothers. One of those are my great grandfather. He was born slave and he sharecropped the land that I live on. That's how we got our land. And everything in that community of Waco, there were Black families and Black farmland, but they worked with the white folks that they sharecropped for. And so it wasn't that it was an equal, I worked hard, I bought this. My great grandfather had to work before he could even buy. And once he had to buy in lots. And once he got all his acres, he made sure that every generation afterwards would receive the same land. So I got it, right? Easy peasy. No, it came with a lot of debt. The banks did not want to help us. I'm reaching out to agencies that, I'm watching on the news and I'm seeing my white neighbors telling me like, go check out FSA and all these other agencies. And I didn't know what to ask. And because I didn't know what to ask, nobody gave me direction. And still we had a home equity loan that my grandfather had taken out to help leverage the tobacco shortcomings. And he had dementia and the loan just lapsed. And
we're trying to figure it out after burying our grandparents and my mother's parents. And so it was just not hard. Nobody wanted to help. People were sending us stuff in the mail trying to buy the land. Taxes were, it was just a hot mess, and there was no one to go to. And at this time, I still didn't have a connection with CFA, and I did not have a connection with other agencies in the state, right? Everything was just crazy. So I went and got, some certifications. I started going to meetings. I'm trying to get all the information, ask all the things. I'm emailing folks with no response. I'm reaching out to our HBCU, no response. So I turned it into a pollinator conservation alongside with my elder. I'm in the community. I know that folks want to come out. So I built a STEM education system, and we did pollinators. And these are some pictures of like some hard work that I really dug into for 2 years with nothing in return, nothing. So I thought outside the box, right? What else can I do? I have to save this land. So, on top of visits and tours of the history of our land and how we do permaculture and pollinator conservationism, we decided to bring in women's retreats and family fun days and community days where communities would pour into us, and any money we made went back to putting seeds in the ground so we could continue to build what would be Ballou Estates, the brand. Ballou Estates is the name that my grandfather had on all the documents that I'm going downtown and begging for somebody to help me. Ballou is our last name that's been in Madison County history for over 100 years. And I built that from scratch. And it did help protect the farm, but I wanted to be a farmer, right? Like I wanted to know how to get the high tunnel and how to get the grants. And I've been doing all this work for all these years. Somebody's got to know who I am, but they didn't. I had families out. I went into communities. I had teenagers out, and I kept building and building, hoping that people would respect who I was. A lot of community partners definitely helped get Ballou Estates off the ground, but the big picture is that I wanted to be a farmer. So I went to my first, this picture right here with the name tag that I didn't get a name tag was at my first fruit and vegetable conference in Lexington, Kentucky. And I sat there and realized that there are no farmers that look like me. There's no examples, there's no teachers, there's no leaders. All the organizations and groups who were tabling, they were all white. And there were women there, but they were maybe a little bit older than me, but nobody that looked like me. So I turned it up a notch, and we started growing herbs and flowers that pollinators love, but we can edibly use. And I turned it into an herbal tea blend company. In this middle picture was the first event that Black Soil Ashley Smith asked me to table at. And I literally created all this stuff in a week. And I was like, this might be my ticket into farming. I can actually farm the herbs and actually steward and farm the natural elderberry and the natural blackberries and turn it into something that's holistic to match my holistic remedy certification. So I'm doing all this work still by myself. I went to my extension. They gave me a whole bunch of papers that I didn't understand. At this time, me and my cousin Jim Embry are going to NRCS, trying to get equip grants, trying to get people to come out there and survey with no answers. I'm reaching out to my HBCU K-State for grants and everything because I've built my brand. I'm a business now, like what's up? And I could not get anybody to email me back. Finally, after a lot of climbing up and calling folks, we finally got somebody at the top of NRCS, and we finally got somebody to come out to our farm. After my story kept on getting played on repeat of what we had to go through to finally get our high tunnels, people were like, this is a thing. The equity, the story you have, and it blossomed into me getting to do the Dope 8 conference. At this time, I'm starting to work with CFA, and I'm letting them know, in Eastern Kentucky, it's a diverse playing field, right? Like Northeast is different from Southeast. The counties closer to Central Kentucky totally move different than the counties closer to the West Virginia area. Like it's you can't just say Eastern Kentucky. You can't just say Black farmers. You just can't say socially disadvantaged. Like we got to get deeper in this because the people at the table are not responsive to the fact that there's more than them and the impact is definitely further than them. So I talked and I connected with folks. We built gardens. We connected community to farmers. It turned into a beautiful thing that turned into CFA's equity work. The more I talked, the more we got to the point where we understood that the Black farmer narrative is completely different in the state of Kentucky than any other, because we were the cash crop and we were the hardest workers that built the landscape of ag here in Kentucky. And those stories are starting to come out more and more. And so during the pandemic, I plainly looked, after listening to my farmers, like, what are we gonna do? The American Rescue Plan at this point is just completely stalled. Money is not coming to us. COVID is, the markets, it was a lot going on for Black farmers. And I had to sit and say with my, my cohorts with the Farm to Table team, if there is 100 applicants for so much pot of money for COVID response or emergency response funding, and 5 of those are Black farmers, if it's competitive, they're not going to get that money. And we continue to figure out ways to try to help these farmers in the state of Kentucky. And CFA took a complete commitment to equity, and we started the Black Farmer Fund. Outside of the Black Farmer Fund, which gave farmers a very, what I would consider a small stipend, but it was enough that these farmers were able to get that extra seed, pay for that extra hand of help, make that extra tactic to not have everybody at this same place at the same time for 6 feet distancing, all the things. It helped leverage that. And that was something that you would think that everybody sees this issue, but clearly everybody doesn't. The conversations we've had since the Black Farmer Fund, since the Black Farmers Needs Assessment, have really opened up Pandora's box of reality. This is really systemic racism in just another generational form. The Black Farmers Needs Assessment off-rolled from a farmers needs assessment that was going to assess all this, the farmers in the state. And I said, Black farmers needs is just a little bit different than everybody else's. The culture, the comprehension, how we communicate, we might need to ask some questions about their needs and wants. What is an agricultural win for you? What is a community win for you? How could we be helping by being Black? Like, you're a Black farmer, what other things that you need to be met? Why don't we see you at the table? Why, talk to us. And with that, we realized that there was such a disconnect between resources. The farmers didn't really understand what all NRCS does, what all Farm Service Agency does, the accountability that they could get receipts for their access services. They didn't know that. They didn't know who was sitting on the boards and making decisions for them, or when those dates were happening. So all of that basically collected into the first Black farmers meetup in the state of Kentucky. First time that all farmers had met in a very, very, very long time. Very long time. And at the Black Farmers Needs, at the first, 2021 Black Farmers Meetup, it wasn't just Black farmers, but it was everybody who was committed to having a more equitable and diverse landscape and agriculture, with the Black farmers at the root of that conversation, at the head of that table. And that then spiraled into us having the 2022 Kentucky Black Farmers Conference, the first of its kind in the state. And that brought over 100-something farmers, as we are less than 2% of the farmers in the state of Kentucky, when we used to be 10, 20 times as much as that in my lifetime, and I'll be 37. It built into strengthening the relationships and the networks, not only within the state, but regionally, having those tough conversations and really understanding that we have a lot of work to do, but here are the players that want to make it better. And getting over that hump has been just pivotal of everything else that we've been going through. So the current efforts right now is that we worked with Emerson Fellows, and they created, with alongside Farm to Table and talking to other people in the food system, a BIPOC toolkit. It's not it's for every market, it's for everyone, but it's for if anybody of color, anybody who's socially disadvantaged or marginalized, who doesn't know how to navigate through agencies, through extension. What are the places for loans? What are the places for grants? You know, it's a whole toolkit that is living in live that I would love, and I'm sure CFA would love too, to make this a regional, what I consider a green book. If anybody's familiar with green book, it's like the agricultural green book was how it was created, and that's ongoing. We're also working very hard directly with our USDA offices so we can not only let Black farmers know ahead of time so they get all their things together because of that comprehension issue with the CFAP and the PPPs and all of that. We're also breaking down those agencies so they can fluidly understand within the state who, how, where, what departments do what, because there's so much confusion that then pushes our marginalized farmers completely out the way, and then they miss out on so many good opportunities. And then the last is our policy work, helping build a strength co-op that actually can go to DC. There's a lot going on with the Federation of Southern Cooperatives as they're working with, you know, the claims, the court claims and everything. We are working alongside that with the voices of the Black farmers in Kentucky. So that's the end of my presentation. The slideshows do a lot, but pretty much beginning to end, it takes power, and it definitely takes resilience, and it takes knowing that our allies are working for causes that may not directly impact them, but understanding that we're all connected. This is a holistic agricultural system that we have regionally. And with the right team players, you can be a nationwide brand, which I successfully became a nationwide brand. I ship my teas all over the United States. So, that's it. That's all. I'll stop sharing if you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Tiff. Let's go through all three presentations, and then I'm sure we're going to have a conversation. So next is Heather Fuston. Did I pronounce that right, Heather?
It's Fuston, but yeah, you're close, which is closer than most people get. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll jump right in. Thank you, Tiffany. That was extremely inspiring and informational, and I learned so much just now, and I loved hearing your perspective and your life experience. So thanks for sharing that. I don't have any slides prepared, so I'll just kind of run through my background. So I grew up in a little bit of an agricultural family. My grandparents raised cows and horses and, you know, had a garden and things like that. And so I was lucky enough to be in 4-H and kind of have a little bit of an agricultural background as a child. And then fast forward, I moved to Athens, and I had the great opportunity to get a job with Snowville Creamery about 10 years ago. And also during that time, I served with Rural Action. I did 2 AmeriCorps terms with Rural Action on their zero waste program. And so now I've been with Snowville Creamery for 10 years. Like I said, I do all of their marketing management, brand redesign, things like that. And I also manage a lot of our sales, account management, and business development. So I really help get us from finding new clients to making sure that that product continues moving off shelf, and then helping with a lot of the distribution challenges that we have, which I think is probably key to this conversation, just in local food access and sort of some of the challenges that Snowville has had in that regard. Also in my personal life, I am a farmer still, and I grow hot peppers, herbal plants and things like that. And we process hot peppers into fermented hot sauces and powders at AceNet as well. So we are tenants at AceNet currently. So very busy, aside from raising my children. So we've got lots going on. But So for Snowville, and as far as this conversation goes, and I'm super passionate about local food and local food access and all the important work that's being done. And I think that's what's kept me with Snowville for so long, is being able to be a part of a team that really is producing local food in a sustainable and conscious way, and then helping to get that to people that need it. Snowville is really mission driven in trying to provide good food for all is one of our mission statements. And that means tons of donation programs and, producing product that we don't actually sell, or maybe that we move through USDA programs, to make sure that people can have access to our product no matter what income level you may be at. Locally it's tough because, we're right here in Southeast Ohio, really close to the West Virginia border, and yet we have the most trouble distributing to our regional area. And I think that is because, it's manyfold, but the pandemic hasn't helped with resources and just making it easy and equitable to move food through the region. And so a lot of what I've been doing recently is helping to connect Snowville with distributors in the West Virginia region, Virginia, and throughout the Appalachian region to make sure that our region is being provided with the good food that we're producing as well. So I think that's kind of my background. So I'm really excited to answer any questions and sort of talk on that more. But yeah, so that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Heather, so much.
You're very welcome.
Look forward to Q&A. Shelley, you're up.
Okay. Am I muted? Can you all hear me? Great. Thanks, Heather. Of course, we get Snowville milk at our market in Huntington, and we absolutely love it. And we try to promote Snowville anytime we can on our social media pages and everything. So I just want you to know that our market really appreciates Snowville. We've worked with them since beginning 2012, and I know it's difficult, the distribution part of it, but I think we're going to get this worked out. Thanks to Leslie as well and Coalfield Development. So thank you very much. And Tiffany, I just wanted to say you are inspiring and keep up the good work. And I really appreciate you being on here. And yeah, thank you to both of you. So I'm Shelley. I'm with the Wild Ramp Market in Huntington. Our market is a nonprofit 501c3 year-round indoor farmers market. We serve Huntington, Kentucky, and Ohio, the West Virginia side. And we have around 140 food producers at our market. We use our business model is a consignment model where we offer an 80-20 split with our farmers. So we retain 20% of all sales and our farmers have the take home 80 cents on the dollar. And so I guess for me, we started this market in 2012 and it was difficult, I'll have to say. It was a community effort, grassroots effort. It was mostly women, I think almost all women that started the market. And what we wanted was for our community to be healthy and to have food access for everyone. And we did not get a lot of help at first, but it didn't really matter, Tiffany. I feel you, it does not compare whatsoever. But as women, it was hard for us to find help because I don't think a lot of people took us seriously of what we wanted to do. And not all of us were even knew it. We had farmers that helped start this. We had community members, the business members in our community, all backing us to help start this market. But it wasn't the easiest thing to do. And I think if I had to say anything, it is to involve your community and just put yourself out there and go for it. You have to be the cheerleader of something that you really believe in and don't listen to what other people have to say about what you're trying to accomplish. But with that being said, now here we are 10 years later with our market, and it's great. I mean, I'm not saying that we don't have our issues and problems like anyone else, but we really have come a long way since 2012. And I really have to say it's because of the partnerships that we've made along the way. We couldn't have done it by ourselves. We tried in the beginning to do most all of it ourselves, and then realized that we did need to reach out to people like, Leslie from ACENET, because she was there in the beginning. And so I think it's important to involve as many partners, organizations as you can, and just get out there. I work with farmers every day, and it's been over 10 years now. And for me, I just try to be a really good listener, listen to the farmers, because yes, we started this market and we have a staff of about 10 now. But we really take stock in what the needs are of our farmers. And most of those needs, honestly, are things like we've all been talking about, which is cold storage for our meat producers, workshops, help with marketing, because now it's, we have more than ever, marketing is so important, which I never really thought about that side of it when we started the Wild Ramp, although we knew that was a small part of it because our market actually started on Facebook. That's how we got started, was on social media. But now I realize that marketing is a huge side of it, and our farmers and food producers really need help in that way too. The marketing side of it, labeling, workshops, education on that side of it. And I kind of hate the word education in a way, because it sounds like, when you tell someone you're going to educate them, it's like they don't know. But but still, I think that those kind of things are important to give to our farmers, which is help. Aggregation, distribution, that's huge. I mean, we really need to work with each other and find ways to partner up. As I said, we have 140 some food producers in our market, and a lot of those producers are actually hitting that age of about 57 to 60 years old. And so that's a huge thing too, where we need mentorships and things like that for up and coming farmers, because we do have some young farmers that are wanting to get into this and to be able to sell at retail markets and other outlets. And they see that most of our farmers work outside of the home. It's not their major income, farming, but most of them do it because they absolutely love it, or it was handed down to them, or they just want to provide food for the community. I don't think sometimes our community realizes that most of our farmers are farming on 2 acres of land, and sometimes less. We have a handful of huge farms that we work with. And so I think that would probably be surprising to everyone, that if we have maybe 60 produce producers, some of them are just urban producers, but they can produce a lot on a small area. And that is kind of thanks to some of the help that we've gotten to provide education and classes for our farmers. People are producing in high tunnels now that takes up their whole backyard, which I think is really cool. So I guess more than anything, I could say is that it does take a lot of work to run any kind of business, but especially a food business, because we all know there's so much involved with that, which is safety, food safety and everything. And so, I feel very fortunate to be a part of this, to meet everyone here today, to get out in the community and spread the word. Like I said, we are a year-round nonprofit indoor market. We have programs that we've started. Those programs have been started to help promote our farmers, to give our farmers another viable economic outlet to sell their products to. So we have our retail storefront. We have our Harvest Kitchen program, where That helps reduce food waste, and it's housed right there inside our retail storefront. And since the pandemic, we realized that we needed to do something else, because we did have to close our doors for about a month and a half. And so that kind of spurred us, which we had already been thinking about it anyhow, into launching an online food system where folks can go online and order food. Luckily, we were fortunate enough to win a 2021 FMPP USDA grant. And so that is helping us to fund for 3 years this online food hub. And I think that it's really, it's going to do well. I have a feeling it's really going to do well. I will say it's like starting a whole nother business. So it's a lot to take on, but I think our community will help us once again, volunteers and all that, to make this happen. And it's definitely needed now too.
Thank you, Shelley. I want to start the discussion, and we still got, at least 15 minutes or more. And I want to start it off with, three of you, if you can identify like up to three, what are the challenges and opportunities kind of moving forward to continue to build out equity, diversity, and inclusion in your respective work?
So for me, for our market, I think the challenges for us is to be able to go into some of the underserved neighborhoods, which we actually did try that when we had our mobile market. That didn't quite work out because honestly, a mobile market can be costly, and you really need a backer, I feel like, with that. And so that is kind of a challenge, to find a way to go into some of the underserved neighborhoods, because we've had so many grocery stores go out in our area. It's sad, but we did just win a grant for a food delivery van. And so, grant, which is great. Grants are hard though. They're very difficult. I mean, we all of us know that. A lot of reporting that goes along with that, and a lot of time and everything. But I'm thankful that we have that grant now, and I look forward to seeing how that all works out with the online food hub and now a delivery van to kind of go out into some of these neighborhoods and make new connections with some of the hospitals, and we can even reach out more into Kentucky and Ohio now too.
Heather, Tiffany, same question.
I mean, distribution is always the biggest topic of my conversation as well. Like right now, Black Soil does the most distribution and marketing and branding of Black farm products. And I watch her drive all over the place, dealing with different delivery people, trucks breaking down on her. And, if we could regionally get distribution between the West and the Central and East, with our minority farmers, our marginalized farmers, and giving Black Soil the opportunity and other partners to actually work about the equitable and the barriers, because she's got to deal with that too and try to get it to places. So if we could just get the distribution out the way, that's the biggest challenge. And like my boss knows, Martin knows that I'm working hard to figure out a way to work with the other people in our local food system to get that distribution specifically for those farmers. Yeah.
I would agree distribution is tough for us in general, like I sort of mentioned before, and I forgot to mention somehow that Snowville is 100% woman-owned. It's a woman-owned company now, and so we've, because of that, had a couple of opportunities for grants and things, access to a Kiva loan that really helped. I would say one of our biggest challenges is access to capital in general, just for upgrades and improvements and expansion growth. It's tough, we've sort of cobbled our creamery together with used equipment and sort of piecemeal, piece by piece, because it's creamery equipment doesn't come for less than $250,000 minimum. And so, upgrading that equipment and making sure it's maintained and having the access to the capital that we need, I think, is one of the main challenges for Snowville. And I would say likewise in my personal small farm business, I would say access to capital has been tough starting out for our first 2 years, and access to land. So we have just a couple acres, and I was glad, Shelley, that you mentioned that we grow on like a half an acre, 1 acre. We're working on a really small piece, and I think access to land is definitely a challenge for us as well, and the capital to be able to access the land. So
thank you all. I haven't seen anything in chat, so what questions do folks have? We'll just open it up. You can unmute yourself, but also feel free to put it in the chat and I'll monitor that. Leslie, if you're talking, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm talking and I'm muted. So I was going to say, I don't know if it's really fair for me to take a turn or not, but I was really pleased for you guys to talk about capital, access to markets, access to land. One of the challenges, I think, with each of the roles that you guys play within a local food value chain is that women have oftentimes a good support network, but they're not necessarily the more conventional influencers within networks. And I'm just wondering, Heather, you guys have been able to access some community development funding, but to a large degree, I feel like as women facing businesses or producers, a lot of times you're not recognized at the same level that other folks might be recognized. So, I'm thinking the usual suspects, chambers of commerce and merchant associations and maybe elected officials. So can you guys talk, Tiffany, you did a great job at the intro, talking about how to navigate some of these challenges, but do you guys have some tips, I guess, to be taken seriously as the powerful women entrepreneurs that you are?
I think, my main tip, and really the way that we've approached it, and being a woman-owned business in dairy is definitely unique. And we have many women leaders in the company. And so we're a very woman-forward company. And, there are challenges with that. I think the way that we handle that is to just keep pushing, just keep going, keep sending those emails, keep knocking on those doors, and we don't accept no as the answer. We just keep going.
Oh, wow. That's great. That's great. And I think you're right. I mean, you don't accept no as the answer. You just don't. You move forward. I know, as I said, when we first started our market back in 2012, I have to say that, we reached out to like West Virginia Extension, and we really did not get a lot of help, but I don't really think they took us seriously at the time. And so instead, we just kept pushing for help from them. And then we just did what we were going to do, and people started to take notice. Just put yourself out there, toot your own horn. Get yourself in the newspaper, get yourself on your local TV channel. That's what it's all. You kind of have to brag on yourself a little bit for other people to take notice. It seems ridiculous, but you really do still have to do that to this day, because I don't think people really thought, oh, a bunch of women trying to start a year-round indoor farmers market. It wasn't heard of at that time back in 2012 in our area anyhow. But once we made it known that we were here, we're doing okay, people took notice and we started to get some help at that time.
I was going to roll off of everything that y'all are saying. It is being resilient. And I'll also like to say, you got to have your posse behind you as you're making those connections and in the newspaper and everything. I name drop and tell you who I've talked to, who I'm affiliated with, and I dare you to act like you don't want. I dare you. It's so the support has to be more than it has to be more than just a connection. It has to be a relationship, because they call those people. They know those people too, and they will ask, well, do you know such and such? And if I say your name, I definitely know that you got my back. So.
Other thoughts from folks? I know I tell Tiff all the time. I mean, she and you know, the farmers she works with have to be out on front. But I always say all the time, Tiff, if you're not getting the attention you need, you know, use me as the old white guy, right? Because I mean, that's the way it is right now. It's like, you know, the old white guy, I can get people's attention, right? Because of all this stuff. And I think the greatest thing I can say to some folks is like, you need to pay attention to what Tiffany's saying, right?
So Crystal, you had a good question too. And we seem to be having trouble with your audio. I hear you talking, but I don't see anything or hear anything.
How about now?
Now that's perfect.
There it is. I keep touching stuff. I was going to ask Martin if we had a white guy in West Virginia we could borrow. If he knew one we could use over here, we could sure use one in West Virginia for a long list of reasons. This has been great, and we have all the feels for all the problems. We work in McDowell County, West Virginia. You know, women run, and also principally African American run. So we've had all the feels, all the issues. And Leslie, I forget which question it was. It's the question that I asked. Was I only asking you by accident? I think I might have only asked you by accident.
Yeah, I mean, I think Crystal, maybe say a little bit about where you guys are headed right now, because again, it's a lot of marginalized folks trying to make something happen in the coal fields of West Virginia to create a fairer food system.
Well, you know, we face all of it. I mean, I'm very familiar with Snowville Creamery. I've been to the creamery, and, you know, you come with a great brand already riding there. And Kentucky comes with great infrastructure, AKA, you know, Mr. Martin up there himself. So, you know, we're working hard at it down where we are, but we've had to create lots of things simultaneously from scratch. So both producers, infrastructure, markets, and we've, you know, identified, and we've been at this for 6 years, all volunteer. Amelia Bandy was also on this call, and Atlas is on our board down our way. And so we've identified 2 major markets, an export market, which we're lucky to launch with a partner out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, with an external partner called Appalachian Gold. We've knocked on all the doors in West Virginia and just found more resonance and movement with more regional or national partners. And we have a community grocery in McDowell County, West Virginia, where we were ranked recently as the worst place to live in America. So we have a long list of uphill battles, whether we, you know, we've submitted multiple power grants and been refused on, you know, for this reason or that reason, you know, the different ways that you slice it. So, you know, we're pushing that community grocery up the hill. So, you know, we often don't know what else we need to do. You know, we all work day jobs and are trying to get in the networks, and we're finally able to pay some people. We've had good, and also what's interesting is we've had good response from things like DHHR when we're focused on health issues. And I think that the gatekeepers for issues of health are different from the gatekeepers for issues of economic development. And so we've had, and our principal trainer, Jason Tart, yay, if you all saw the recent episode of United Shades in America. He was the farmer featured at the end. That's our principal trainer and farmer. We're finally able to pay him a little bit for the training that he does. And when we have a successful NRCS grant around equity, but the fight we had with them was, well, you want us to do equity and conservation, but you won't let us actually establish businesses. So we've had to find other private financing, most of that in the faith-based realm, for some of that stuff. So, you know, we're open to friends, you know, we're open to partners. We've got a lot going on. Please come visit us. We've got a lot happening in Kimball, West Virginia. The town there has been great. So, you know, we're still looking for the keys to get our grocery open. We did successfully win an HFFI, and we were disqualified from RBDG on a technicality, but we appealed. That was this year. But you know, none of this is cheap. And I'll say one last thing. And this is not going to sit pretty, but bear with me. So I have a book contract out on economic sector stuff. So that's my day job as a research faculty at an HBCU here in North Carolina. And as I said to someone recently, you know, this is a little bit bigger picture for us to think about. And we think about this down our way because we have to do big picture funding to scale where we are to make stuff happen. That if you think about in the last 10 years since the Obama administration, the kind of investment that's been put in renewable energy, right? He signaled the first $100 million in 2010, and that signaled to private industry that we are open for business and investment from the federal government for renewable energy. Yesterday, finally, you know, a lot of people, you know, want to throw stones at our senator here in West Virginia, but he finally signed off on a climate bill. That means gargantuan amounts of money, principally focused on energy. We do not have that same kind of comparable investment in sustainable agriculture, which means they're not serious about sustainable agriculture until we have that kind of investment. So the one thing I would advocate for here, you know, this is all great and well that we listen to each other's projects over the next 6 months, but until there is a comparable kind of investment done in sustainable agriculture, we're all going to be competing with each other. It's all going to be piecemeal. It's going to be, you know, $100,000 here. Not that we're not grateful for it, but it's not real structural change. And, you know, we have analyzed in our area what it would take for structural change. That at the end of the day, our game is infrastructure, because without it, we can't ask farmers to put out the capital investment. You know, I'm sorry to you there, Heather, that you've got to put out the kind of capital investment. Imagine if there were cooperative of creameries in your area where you all had access to that kind of, you know, infrastructure, or, you know, Tiffany or whatever, that it's in a different model. And that's what we're trying to work off of, which is not easy either, but, you know, it might seem pie in the sky, but it's really pretty realistic. Nobody asked the coal fields to put up all the infrastructure, the rail and all the housing and everything else. They had $1 billion worth of comparable money in the 1880s to do it. And, you know, that's where things begin to get serious. So I know that's not exactly a question, Leslie, but, you know, if anybody else has another way of going about it, we don't know. we're glad to hear it. So that's my mouthful on any of it. The grocery, the infrastructure, the money, any of it.
Well, Martin, do you want to wrap us up? I'm not sure if there's any other questions.
Yeah, we are at time, aren't we? Well, I really appreciate you all. And I want to say is we're going to try to capture all this, not only for the White House conference, but, you know, I see the names who are attending. There are folks on here who are willing and eager to invest, right? Invest in this work. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do is to lift up the investment opportunities and be clear and straight on those opportunities. So again, I thank you for this conversation. It is, you know, it is ongoing work, right? And, you know, and it is woven into everything. I think the diagrams that Catherine walked us through earlier, it's hard. It's hard to put in a diagram some of this work, but, you know, the equity work has to be integrated and focused through everything We always have to ask that question. I'm so glad with my staff, who always, I feel like they're always asking, where's the equity in whatever particular project we're working on? And then holding our partners accountable as well, right? At least we have found in Kentucky, most of the organizations are white. Most of them say they want to work on these issues, but they're not sure how. And I think for us, we have accepted that that's one of our roles is to help them begin their own equity journeys. I'll leave it there, and let's see. I hand it off now to Kathleen. Thank you all very, very much, especially Shelley, Tiffany, and Heather.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, everybody. This has really been great. So this next section is going to be another interactive one where we're going to use Jamboards again. So what we're wanting to do, you may recall earlier we mentioned that there are 3 different subgroups that are part of the Food and Agriculture System Working Group. And what we'd like to do is have you choose a breakout session for one of those 3 groups. We're going to use a Jamboard to capture ideas for how you might want to become an active participant in that in that working group. Also, what ideas should we provide to the White House Conference? So what you're going to have is a couple of facilitators in each of the breakout rooms that will take about 20 minutes to collect ideas and thoughts. And then our plan is that we will have 10 minutes to share the primary ideas or themes with the full group after we have done some brainstorming with the Jamboards. Well, it looks like we're all back. Wow, that was quick, wasn't it? I hope everybody was able to share some ideas that we will obviously pick up and follow back up with folks. And encourage you again, if you are interested in participating in any or all of these working groups, please reach out to one of us. And I, personally would love to have as many people engaged in the PAD discussion as possible. So Leslie, I think you are up.
Well, let's see how quickly I can unmute myself. So this is great. It's 12:52. Thank you to everyone who's hung with us this whole time. We're experimenting. We wanted to have as much interactivity as possible in these sessions. So giving us some feedback on that would be really helpful. You'll notice that we've been using the Jamboards because then we have a great sort of paper trail of all this incredible input that we're capturing here. Again, I'll go back to this is the food system hive mind. And we've just got to mine this for the richness that it affords. So a couple infomercials. Tell your friends. I think we started out with about 100 plus folks who participated. We've kept the majority of that group together. So again, thanks for sticking with us. Between now and August, we'll have some opportunities for you to give us feedback. You'll see social media promotions for the summit in August. I'm thinking that it probably is going to take a deeper dive on a lot of the infrastructure connections to healthy food access. So this was kind of the opening teaser in some way. And now these next 5 summit sessions are probably going to go deeper on specific topics. We'll still focus on themes. But this is very self-directed. So we really want to hear from folks. Please reach out to me or anyone in the group. If you have a presentation or if there's some other folks that you would like to share a panel topic with, we really want to make sure that we're not missing any of the stories, any of the models that people are working on throughout Central Appalachia. And then the next summit will be the 4th Thursday in August. I'm going to pull up the CAN website again. The registration, lickety split, real easy. If you haven't registered for any of the upcoming sessions, please do that. We have an incredible communications team with Megan and Kayla. So you'll be seeing more information coming out through social media. Please post and share that social media within your networks as well. So August 25th is our next summit session. I'm wondering if there's any other parting comments that the organizers would like to share at this point.
I just put in the chat, I would love to share the links with me about the links to the jam boards for the pad and beginning farmer session so that I can work on compiling those and sending them on to the task force.
So Martin, I apologize. I didn't have it set up correctly for the beginning farmers, but we took extensive notes that we'll get to you.
All right, ASAP, please.
Any additional comments I'm seeing get posted in the chat? Again, thanks for your attention and your feedback. And it's 12:56. You have 4 minutes of freedom and we'll adjourn. I'm wondering though, organizers, if some of us can stay on as other people exit, so we could maybe just do a very brief debrief as to how today went.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank everyone.
Thank you.